Order!
Kona nalarinta. Kona kotit atanak Lord God uglok tuning ïnuktitut na kuoyumik. Inuilo ayok hangayok ilayaktut ikayok tawaglutik nunalaptingni. Habak tullo kanok tulli kaak munakayawlutik ihumkainig na kuoyumik tuniwagluwit. Not katibut inang neutibut tamaita ikayokluwit. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this new day. We ask that you be with each and every one as we work together for our territories. We ask that you be with our families who are grieving in communities. We thank you that you give us strength as we ask, and we ask that you be with our elders, our community members, and help them through each day. We ask this prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Colleagues, I'd like to thank Annie Goose for
Kuili mayaga ani goes tuksati kataman. Temate pinasako nung ani nung katta kavusi. Kanayang nang monti kimigata. Minister kausingin. Iglulaki ng mo minister. Kaya na may okate. Okate. Gavamak ko atutiling ni kanokto takahon ng mata. Iglulaki ng mon, tuwang ng tunay, ilagay iglutik kasi ane, tamak ko na nga, nunalito kay gaba manginig. O kausi o ka, nagsimang matagaba magkautiliyaw si manangini. Nunakakatuto kay gaba mangipin makaw yung may ilagiyaw ya kaya kang mata, iglulaki ng maupigyak, titibale, yun na nang may nunatsep, nunangini. Ang malupiw diyo may yuning, aktok tao si mayun na kulo, inakutigiyaw yun. Takko si magiluwi lagi kun na tiyang nang isuli yulutik. Iglulaki ko no na bang may atilyo si malaktu si tamane ang ako tini ilagin no na litok ay gawa mangin. Aketyo gawa makungining sa tu gawa mangining dene gotin gawa mangining man na salo. Ilagi yaw nelo suti gut chinalay katimayingin. Tunga viulutik no na tseb gava makunginiman na ilakakatang ng igutsin katimayingin tako ang erote itamay ni tunga viunelak to gava maukatigitut ilagiyaw katang na ilang matano na lilawak lagvik inovig titli zay Fort McPherson ang malusigachik tako apilo at tumi kayo si titigi at takang na ilang mata iglulaki ng magpilagayo yutimi katingin at tikot si bulak pao jaw titigi ang nalakata nunaling ni iglulaki ng mapang ng may pilakayak sa niglo at yun ako akatakluta at tikot piyo si bala ko tao yun na sinamat na iglulaki ng mapilakayak ayaw yugwetsin nunang inni o kakti nun at siyab ka makungin iglulaki ng mga kutingit kasi makataw tinang mulang katigi ikutin Tita kailo ang ako tao yu ako mang mata tu ni ajiging ito nun alito kay gawa matokat kungin nun manaw yumilo ang ako tao lao tu asidyo tao lutita kuno nga tako kausarilo o kati ilita kayaw si mayunik sulian atiliok tao si mayo kang iningan ninyo na siyam gawa magkungin si uliw titin ng nerto pila katakain na ko manayong nunaling nega pamalaki ng minanituin na siya nunat siyang may manaw yung yellow knife alay katudya katigingay sa katitaw lao sa Mayu 2023 ngutilo ko katimayingin tukiliw tayo katang na yung mata katudya katigiglu-tiglu nunat siya pamagasangin na iglulakiyo katawag tunay ang malupin makayo yun kanuiliw tayo katang na ilang mataman na kaw yumayaw kaya katunin at yun na ko katang na ilang sutiglo laki ng musibulak pa o jaw yun Kuyalittiartunga tagvuunna piviksaqartitaugatta iglulerinarmi angirutaunealertuninnunatsiarma ilagiluginnunalitoqaigavamakungin pilereqatigiikpallianittinni iglulerinarmi piusivalliatittiumanarmi uqarti nunaleralarmi utaullungattau aullaaqattarsimangmigama nunalinnu nanituinna takkoqattarsimayakka iglukiksartuun nunalinnuun katujaqatigiigluta ilagilluugit nunalitoqaigavamakungin kiinaujaksaniktaunерсааваллиаюннармата инуиллу пивиксақаттиарнерсаулутин кинауялиервиксақаттиарнерсааюннарсутиглу илагиигниккут иглулеринерми қануилиорутиксани пиваллиатиттиюннарата нуналинни сангинерсааюни қануингинерсааюниглу инуитту нунатсиармиу таллариуюннарсинеармата қуйунайнииксивоотаа Minister oqausingiit nunalingniing gavamaleqinarmu minister qinamiaqati saanganealertuksaagmigatta uleqattarnealermiyumi imarmuun imaqalualernamu ammaluikualanermaun tukisimayakkut amisut nunaliit inuillu isimaaluutaqarmata tamakkuningaat kappianaqattarnealermiyuning atoqattarsimalertattini anigortuni sitamaniaqqaaguning aputeejarpallialermitillugu tamannaannuna takuyariortavut attinerpaatsiarmi imaqartigilermata isimagillugi tamakkua piyumisaayunga nunalingning qauyigiaqattainnaqullugu ilamini peqatialukunginni sanileriamini piluartumillu innatoqarning asinginniglu qaritauyakkut atorpangittuapiin tamatumani nangearnarnealermingma tikittoq uvattinnuun ilinnearsimaliqattata imangana aqqaanini saulaartumi ikuallaktoqalaortillu ayunginnersauleqatta sanginersaulersutalu oqarti ikajorti uyunnarneaqatta ikajortaujarayalingni ammalutamakkua tuavernartulerinermu parnautiksait nutaaqoqaartaulaumata taakkuait pigiyaut juumiqullugin tukisinarnersauyunnaqulluvillu nalunaiartauttiakkannilaortu qanuiliortiit kamayoqattartullu nunalingni gavamaujuni sivuliortiutitaujun tuavernartulerinermu nunamini ammattau gavamakkut nunatsiarmi nunalitoqaillu gavamakkungi gavamaungitullu timiqutingin pileqatigiignialermiyu nunatsiarmi tuavernartulerinermu aulattinermuun sivuliortiuyut tuavernartulerinermu isimagilluin nunali gavamakungin timiquteqariaqartu aulattijuuneartuni katujaqatigiigniing ilaqarneartuni nunalitoqai gavamanginni asinginnillu nunalingni gavamakkuttau sangineqaqungmiyavut ilautittiyunnaqullugiit nunalitoqai gavamanginni gavamaungitullu timiqutinginni ammalu nangmineqartiuyuning tuavernartulerinermu parnautu iqauyimayaavagiarutik akaunersauqattarnearmata tuavernartulerinermiu nalunaiyaaqattarunnarnear ammalu akilertutauqattarunnarnearsuti tamakkuninga kamayoqattauqattaruting uqarti nunalingni gavamauju taimanga tuavernartulerinermu parnautaqainnauyaraming qimiqquaqattartu ammalu aqaagutamaajorunneersaqattarsuti nunalingni gavamaleriyikku oqarsimalertu tamainnuun nunali gavamakkunginnuun ikajortiuqattaquyaulluti parnaivalliaqattarninginni katimaqattarninginnilu ilinniarpalliani qanu ikajorunnarmangaata iqqanaajarvittinnitau aaqqimaqattarmiyu ikajortiksai nunalingni gavamaujunun unikkaarvioqattarunnartut gavamakkutau tamaani sivulliunginnarmata parnakpagiarsimattiarumaneq ajungittiaquyinerlu tuavernartulerinermuun nunalingni gavamaleriyikkuut tuavernartuleriyikkut timiqutingan tamaarmiglu gavamakkuneeqanaajartiuju qimiqquaqattarmata sivuneagu taakkunanga ulorianartumu tikitaulaunginninginnisuli ammalu qauyimatitauqattarmiyu ikajorsuiqattaquyaulluti tamaarmeeqanaajarviit timiqutigiyaujullu taikkunangaan atuinnaullutik eqqanaajartingi ikajortaujarajalingnuun atune eqqanaajarviittau kamayoqattarmiyu nutaaqoriartittineermi piyaksariamini nunalingnuun Amisuni ajigingituni tuavernartuleqiyoqalerunnarmaatautikkuut ilagiyaulutik nunalingnigamamaleriyik usaqqiisimayut tusagaksalersimalertulu nangmani nunalingni kayusrittinermi parnautik saqaqullugiin ammalu ilitaqiyaamaqullugi tuavernartuleriyillariunaartu gavamauqatigiittuni eqqanaayarbigasaayut sivulliortiqartu aulatiyiit eqqanaayarvinginni ammalu nunalitoqait pileriyiit eqqanaayarvingani sivunaagu tamatamaqqaagu puluqianartu tikivviksangani eqqanaayarvitsinni aqqaagu tamaaq tuavernartulerinamu parnaivagiarutiksaai pinasuarusermi katimanialermiyu atuinnautiarunnaqullugiit pimmariuninginni nangmini ammalu ilaminu parnaksimavagiariaqarningin tagmani aqqaagumi tautugaariyavu pimmariuninginalliukumaaqsaqariaqarningin ujertutsiariaqarattanalliukumaaqsaqarpagiariaqarninginni tuavernartulerinamu ikajortaaru yariaqqasikaallarnerut asiaguorbiksaqanngittuun tamarmikluangeqqaariyauyut iglurjominikluaturtuartuun nangminiqartullu timiqutigiyauyullu nalliukumaaqsaqiyunnartamani qauyigiaqattariaqartuut ukiortartuermiu tauluutaqauyimayuinnaugatta tuavernartu aksorunartummarialuuyunnarman akituyualuuyunnarsuni ammasukkunartualuulluni qauyimangmiyu parnaksimattiaqattarutta akturtaunerlunginnersauyunnartugu aksorunartukkuunginnersauyunnarsut alu isumakkut kiinauyatигуллу nunalingnikavamauyut ilauvallialermiyu angumainnerasuksutiullumi qanuilioriaqarnermini parnaksimavagiarunnarner taimaatsainartaunarminili gavamaungittuullu timiqutungi inuillu nangmini kayusiyunnautiksaminu parnautiksaning tukiliupagiiquyausimayu taimaila 2024 mi parnaksimavagiiquvavut tamakkua uluqianarningi saqqipallianialermitillugi uvattinni sapunniariaqaratta eqqanaayarviktinnilu tuavernartuleriyunnarlu talu tamakkunanga tiguariattinni uumayorni qimminiklu ammalu parnaksimavagiaqattarlu tuavernartuqalituarpa tigusiyunnarniaqatta aullaaqutiksarinaalertattinni piyuumisangnallariktusi ilitsitamatsittia parnaksimavagiarunnaqullusi ammalu qaritauyaku qauyigiaqattarlusi namu tukusigiarunnatsiarniarmangaasi qauyimavagiarunnarniaqasi sivunaagu qanuilioriaqarniarmangaasi ammalu namungauyariaqarniarmangaasi qaritauyaku tamakkua silalerimmigmata ammalu naukku ikualayoqarmangaan amisuninluasinginning uqaaningnaaleraamauqarti ilitariyaaquyakka eqqanaayartitta tamarmi pileriarisimayangi taimangani ammalu quyalittiarsugi tuavernartuleriyunnunatsiarmi nunalingni inungnillu attanartumi hitittiittailiinnartu quyunnamiyoqarti nunalingnikavamaleriyikkuun ministaaqqausingin malagaleertioqqausingin quyunnamiyoqarti neruagaksaunerani ukiaksaangulaortu Yellowknife mitaqiya usiortikku katimaninginni ilaulaurama alaanaimmaqilaortunainaartausimayu ukiurtartumut oraangayu taqiyauti tautorannaagaksaulaurmata naqunaartuutittailamanarmi piuseqaqoyiyu inuuqatittinni asittinning maligaleertiittau unikkaarvioqattarmata kiinauya atortuksai qanuilinganinginni taakkuaquvianallariqattarmata kamagiyauqattarningin iluunnainni tukusillugi qanuiliorutauvallaanangi pileriaqsaulaortuugalua Yellowknife mi piyariartausimayuuyaarmata ammalunnunatsialimaammi maannauyu attanartumi tummaqi alongmata asingaanginning ajorunneersartauyoqarunnaqaluarman akuniunaartamutoraanganiartuniin malagaleortiuya parnailarsimangma maqqaunnuaqaaguunnaartunu isaaqsimaviuyunnarninginni ukiortartormiu ernisuksiyunnanarmi ilinniartitauyunnarninginni oqarti Mana uyamakkoy na kulong na ilin na ako mayo kasi mang maul may mo tikilo ko. Amalu yellow knife mo ti ko magalo asute ukto ako malute han nerving ani tamane. Ilago tamaw nga kun nang ito ako ti asyan ekanayak sang siyo kaya karnelang ming mata. Amalu ko kinaw ya to anilaw tang ilin na ako tik sa may no. Utak tita kaya karnel rilo nego kati 24 na ikakanita ko yung nisuksay koon. Tusa ko masimang mataw kaya tato may tao yung isimagiyang ini o kati so tamak ko kaya may alumaw ngati ako lo isimagsasiho tao katatakat pibig sa ako tititawag sa tiglo ilinak to ko lo ilinak kan naroon ng nangineng apak ko sa kaya na takaan na tulaga ng mota ko na magsikpa ko yun namin
Member from
ko yun namin malagalaw ti grade slate malagalaw ti o kausingin Maligalaw ti Inuktitut. Kaya na may okati. Pikoto diyo alagayik ko. Kaya makapalalang mata NTS ko. Pila kaya kayangin na. Nasa hotel yun na okati. Okay, tatok pasing may nang sa yun nun, alayaw lati Diyos sa kibagtangi kay makawata walekan na kaya kakomata. Mackenzie Delta ilo ani piloto ming. Aw lati yakakalawa mata. Gawa mawa miyo kalawa aw lati yu tiyang ito palo kat aming mata. Nekawati ilo ekanayak tingilo. Nang minang mong autiti wala nga kakatuya kila kakiyak kanayat nang sa yun nang nang mata. Ingin kayo lakibang niyaw, lako tiksa lakibang niyaw. Kamagiyaw nga kakatuya kasugila ka singin nutak ko. Apak ko tiya lang niyaw mayak ka na magsikpa ko yun na mayakati. Malagalaw tiyo kausingin. Mackenzie Delta. Ko yun na mayakati. Ilunay ni nunalay nunatseme tema tsena iglukik sang mata amaloy kanayak sa katyak pangisute nunali aklag ving miyon ing migo tumakalo katang mata singin ni nunaliw yun ay pidyo tao ni nga no silaw pa si Diyok pala ni nga Manama kailamay unang saklo sila si Diyok pala ni nga no aw pala kat alang matubayak pala kat alang sunilo. Ako ti kuta kang ngikilo tiglo. Ako ti kuta ka kote kimayon nang nasaw na yakalawa mata. Ikaw ala yung kakpalone ulito kakpalone. So atik pala yung makalaw tilo-ilo nunang itong mabigayangin. 15 ulaw to na kagulaw to na 20 feet ni itinang sa ulaw kalawa mabong magala kanino na kanino sa nganon. Sigya mo tiki umalaw mata na ako tikuta. So atik tao tayo lumayakaya kakalawang man. O kati asingin ni tao awiktok si manangin ninyo na tsayang me. Hamlang anituktuyak tong me. Ikayok tao katay na kaya kalangming mata. Sigyang aso atik pala ni nga nun. Nung nga sa kalitik pala man. Amalo awan ni alakan ng takyo kanigiyang ni laukalo mata nun ang awang nga pala to na mata nung pala yun. O kati imik takatang mata kung ni tao na katato ni makukangan. Ako tinga so atik pala ka tiga katalang man. Ako tinga ako matitaw yun nakalawang may lagi yaw luti inu naling ni. Atok daw yun na nakakamataman na. Ako tikuta nga ito tilim makayalong masibunig sa unatumon. Tako nang tao tiya kaya kama ako tikuta nga inuwing mo tikiyo mayong. Ang malo inu itay ka na yaklag ving milo inu ko tingiyak tuk tao si malaki lang mata. Ako tiyo ko tiwala ni nga nutuktuyak tong mingapag to ako tingan. Ami suga sa ulat to na yak ako na o kati Tamain no ang tao yung mayong amaligalerti no ukausik sa kapiyakero malloge ko yun na may ukausik sa minipiyakero mang maagato ka pa agato kang makayo sila ulit ukausik sa ni ko yun na may kante nunali aklagwing may ilagiyaw kate kon nang itya makilang matay laga mamakune kanayak sa kaditaw ya kalwa ka nga may nunali ayong ituin na mo kayo sin na ng mata kayo sin nakatak si mang mata amalo aklagwing may ulo kaya nang ito may tunak to kasi anay kayo tao katak lutigawa makuno kaya na may kate maligalerti makansidelt maligalerti yalo na ang nanganon o kati ko na may nalo nang ito tuwang nang to kalang mamaan na yung kay mga nino bang ang di ati kilaw tilo ikayo sa taong ilo mo ekanaya tibo nakakatal ilaw mata ang malupit ka tao yakaliw kalawat matuwing ang lutao yung nailisi maluti ekanaya ti kanginingin nun ang malukatak palya tuwing nalakiluti ekanaya kung nalaw tiyo kalawat kitok palya nangin niwaksain isi magiyatin ni sakit iti si magtako tayo may ninganon isi magsasayo ko tiksa ako yatin ni tamani kinaw yalaki ng mon piliribalyan itin kanayat ipis makuta kung nakulugin kanayat karlo tato kusinarte o hatang nertuning kanayat waktu na kauta maang siutiliri yun isi wulerte o kataw yung nasinayatun pilawatuming kanayak wing ni maligakayaw yun ni tusayaw yakayaling ni kanuiliw ka kakatang nangin nilo maligalaki yun na nang ming kanayak ti o kakata kung nakayatuta kuno nga to kasi na tigiyaw yun o isa malo tigiyamining aksaro tigiyaminig lunin ako siyo tiyo yutito kayo tiyo na amata Pekko apigerti tao ko yavo kanayarti tu kusinarti mailinga na yartun. Pitakain ang lutik. Kau imalutik kanayalini ulutik. Ingmikung alutik gawa makunon. Gawa makuno ilaliw tiyaw si mangiluting. Awla tiyaw yung natutitu sangin nakatitaw luting. Amalo kau imayita kak luting. Ayong ituning. Ikanaya tini pingilo tiya singin ne kanaya karetuning. Inong neng. Akaw ngiliw ko tao yun ito kiliw tiyo tiya kung nakayatuning. O kate, tamay nang ang tao yung mayong akaw siksak kapiya kaya kumalugin. Yun ay fawang nang ano ang tao yung mayo tamay no akaw siksak minipiya kaya kumalugin. Agato ka pa. Agato kang matilo. Kaya na mayo kate. Sakit itaw ningin. Katimaya kalat. Tukas na ate o katam na ate ut. Kanutuin na te kamayo yun na kaya kakayatun. Kiyo katam na ate na ikayo tao yung mayo nun. E kanayat yun na. Abak ko tigaya lang na maya ka na magsikpan. Kaya na maiyaw na ifo ang nang ano. Maligalaw te o kausingin.
Criticism focused on the government's failure to take decisive action on the priorities.
Kawamak ko kausakayang inyo kausakatay na kama range like may inong nikigatok tak kaning piloto mi ane kilaki yun Stanton mi tuwang natulaki na pikalo mo tayo na ane si tituin na takuyaw yun na nangin takuyaw tuwin na kung nailima kalang mata amigaloa mo kanaya tiyan na mi Stanton mi Amalo tiliyaw waktu kalau kamayo ko yaw lutian na tune ayulit siya makilisutin. Tuwang natulari na luwalang matataman na ko sa naktu na suwilag ako. Amisualo ilo na yan, bilekat makilang mata yalo na sila taano nang miniling noon. Takuyaw sa kain nang naksawang ningin no teko. Ino hingga makuno kamagiyaw yun nang nangyaan na tuliriyaw titao yun usuliyaw yun na making mata. Pilo at tuming. Ane silti so sa inulo anang natutaw yun na kasuin ng mata. Ane tuliriyaw tamani takokatat inung ne. Ane lakit yun ikaw yung mata kano hilaw kaya kang nang mining. Amalo iswa sa hilaki o waktu kau yung mater suti kanuiling ang mga ta gawa may kanuili ko isung mga ta lutamani nyo na tserme. Tay man na yung ito alo wala ko si magalo ang mata. Amiso alo tillo akilakaya karto tamani lo akito yung makalo lo na inu sa kakaswaso na. Kau yung malutig lo ane surti iswa sa yung makilo. Katima katigin na si magaki union ko kanayak tingi katudya katigin amalo tamag ko iso sa iyan na si ilo isumalo tigiyangin te mali kangang tinala kalo pagawa mo yutu kisilo ti kau ima yutu atsengo ningin nitak ko kau ima yaw yakayaling ning okay tato me kanayak ti ulenik to ko yun naming tuna day well a day ko yun naming fourth resolution me tuwag natuloy me kamayo yung malilaw mata ako nakalaw lang to kamayo katak sa malang mata maluwa to katsya to na ako siksak kasi ungulo te ukaw tiyaw lang mata ino naling ni maligang ni malilangan na kailo te ato agayaw yun maligaya kang ningin ni malik daw kau tiga ko nakaluwak puta magko ato agayaw yun. Nung nalay piyutin ng sanin ni kayong mata gawa magkung gawa ma ngokatak tuning suli yok sang mata suli ang maluwa ulit ako katak tung aviw yun na kaya kang mata kanulimat siya nga suli ilang inu nalito abang natulirin ng mupang nautakangit siya making mata tabani pinasawa ko siya nung ni sitamay igloy so katertaw makilaw mata ko alayo katilog tamani pinasawa ko siya kau yume ang maloy lang ino yan nang si mamakilaw mata ta natagatog likiyaw likiribok iko ala ng maut pinanglutaw yun nung natin ni kau yumayaw yaka kartod panak tukaw tigim makiulaw mata naparto itawan iliner titaw si mangiluang nanginlo nginulo kateriyaw katarto kalo at fourth resolution me ang umayaw yun na ililaw matalo ni kilamikulo iklong itsitama iko alayo along mata tahuan ulo kaya naktumiti ta ulakilang mata iglo biningilo iko alayo binalo yakta ko alo ulak sutin nuna mito alo ulak to kate ukaw siksak maliklugi apa ko tigiya lang na takawate ako kayo na mito na day wala day maligalaw ti mato imon kayo na may ukati amisurso nga ukaw si kasi malakama isumalo tigiyak kanin na to kahit tamani maligalaw ring may ukaw si rin nakakin ang mata na to kahit awik to si maning ani ang erote kang mata amisunigo tukusi umang itchak suti ati leo tita kata tukulong mata tita kanay tu saya katita katangin ningin noon ang malawang yung kaminingin na ko magalawa kiluting inoy natok ako paleningin ne kanaya ko ne sutiglo akilirtuiqaani kunnaillisuukulluung mataangeq aqiyamini atortuartamineng oqarti igluleriikkuun ikajortaaqusimagaluaqakkiit nangminaqarunnaqullugu innatoqain kisianni paiqiyaunersaoqattarialikuluung mata akilirtuqunnangitaginni Inuktitut ilumatjuuminasoqattaarlute iqauimayunga innatoqait aviktorsimanittiinni kiinauialeaqalaaqulungit suli kiinauiaitigoqartauvalleaqattarming mata katersuiyinuun akiliiyunnailligaangami igluminu atortuartaminuun ammalu iglumini niuvilautaminin innatoqai akiliiyunnailliguti akiliiyunnaillisimaqattarmata kiinauialeaqiyaaqaluangillu asijjikitakpangimmata qubbaqsigiarpangitsuting katersuivioqattarmata isimagiyaujunniiqviungaarialiugaluan nunatseap gavamakkungiit piyunnarniqaqaluarmata kiinauiaiyartailititsiyunnarni innatoqarning ammalu ikajortiliugalua ilamini nangmineriamining akiliksariangi isimagiyaujunniiqviungaarialiugaluan igluleriikkuoqaqattainnarmata kiinauialeriikkunu kamagiyaujaqaaqarneqaivaksutik qanortuurutauqullugu akiliksariauju innatoqarnuun asingaanginni atortaungaaqunnaartuni apeqqutiqariallarniarmiyunga wattaarunaammaksikpaan quinamiing maligaliortioqausingin kiutsutioqausikku apeqqutinuun Iluna qitianut maligaliorti number 3 nguyumaviin pingayugiyauyumaviin maligaliortioqausingin number 3 mo maligaliorti number 3 mo terumayuangerpisi agaangimmatati maligaliortioqausingin oqarti iquyunnamikatimayauqatikka oqarti uyaqanniarbinnigu qangalimaatiaq kayusiyunnasuunguyuugalu uyaqangikisiani uyaqanniarbigu taimangittut ikajorsuoqattaqama oqarti ilinniartulerinerming ajorunniqsartauqullugu iqqanaayartiin kiinauialiorutauqattarmata nunalignuun ajorserunniqutaujunnermata ilagiiktunu oqarti puigortailita atjigiingittuutiuyuning kiinauialiorbiksauqattarunnasuungungmata uyaqanniarmiin oqarti nunatsaap gavamakkungi ikajorsuillarikkaluarpaan matuertaujumaninginni uyaqanniarpiksain paalitakku ilinniarbitsuarsanga tamaani ilinniakkutaakviksanga saqqititaujumaгаluarma tamaani oqausiunginnatsiarunnartuugalua kisiani pigiartitaullarigialiin oqausiutuinnaqaluaqaangami suvaalirutauvangimmata qanuiliurutaungittuaruting kingumaluarta ilimajaqaaqamarikkata pigiarbiksaniksimanaaqutta ilinniakkutaakviksami politikming gavamakku oqaqattainnarmata imannailiornaartugu imannailiurumaartugun qangali pigiallarinnnialiqaluarpaat gavamakku iliqasunnangikkuuti kappiasungitjuumiyunnaaruti pigiarsimayutoqaaluunayartu uyaaqaluarmata Mackenzie Valley Highway aqutikkutaanga Mackenzie 50 mailini ungavaqaakkarneraajalautuuq sulipigiartausimaqatangimingman kiinauiaatuttuksait ingmini akilirtuivalleaqattammaqilermata taannamaannauju piviksattiavammaqialungmagavamakkunnuun Apikot alakan na kumata kaka. Kaya na may malagalaw ti iyaw na katianon. Dahil siya umeo. Kaya na may okati. February may pigatit tilaw si magama. Pero yung ako may tagbanig lulakin ng musibol lang may pigatit tilaw si magama. Maligalaw ring may litakayaw ko lugo. Iglo kaon na akakang na inulimano. Tung aviw ni nganing. Piyun na utakak piyun nga nagla malunyo na siyam ka makungin. Maliga kang mata maligayaling ni sila jami ino piyun na utakak nangin nun. Tung abe yun ay maliktaw yakayaling nigla malutog lang may. Pero yung ako may sakadit sila ako si mang may yung tusak titaw yung malung ako nuiliw laking na ang mga ata. Nunat siyang may iglulakin ng mo katimayingin. Nunat siyang may iglulakin ng mo maligang maligluwa kaya tao yakayakang mata maligaleon na kayakang igata tagvan ni maligaleon tiyo na intine na mayumeng inong nutuka nga yumay so ang nasami piyo nasaming o kati taman na iglulakin ng ukiw tato may ulo kaya ng tumidyo ta umakilang man ang malo iglo kakali kangalimatya amisunak pangulak sutik kuting ng sa mga along may takalwalo kaya na dami wasingin nino na lipaw yung nito na mangiluang ng iglukik sang na kami sa kupala ng iluang ang kakangitut isumalutang matagawa magkuno katudya katigayut out siya kaya katu gaba magkupila katakat siya kaya kamata no nalito kaya gaba manginyasing inikluti may kutigayaw yun so lo alay na nito na katudya katigayut ang inyasing inilu abik tong sa maningin nung nalilo ka ba magayang inipiyo na sana sa katitiyo ng neakoteng. Ilita kaya ko ng matatak ko at mainik aba magkot sang inaksaw titiya kaya kang nangy kayutik sana iglulakay ng mon. Pimaki umaino kangalo na aktok tao ng luk si manangilin na kaya titaw lang si malutitay sa mani. Tako ayulak si mang mata itong kain ng niko ulak sa tigluga magkuno iglukat titaw yun na ng mining. Ang malawayok sang nang mo kayo taong inakayakang ning inning. So lumikigayak tao si mayutitut muna. Ay asyago bigsa ko ti si mang mata tako kaw sa kayo mayak ka. Kayo na mayo kate. Malagalaw tayo kaw singin. Apik ko tayo kaw sikon. Apik ko tayo kaw sikon. Ilita ko yaw nang malagalaw wing mayton. Inuvic Twin Lakes. Kayo na mayo kate. Ulak. Canada may cancel kayik ko tako kawagakit. Ang ayok ka dyan, ang alo Angeline, wabo wane kataulo na ilita kayaw ko yaka. Ilita kayaw na ngay malagalaw kong miton. Kayo na may kate. Ilita kayaw ko yaka. Ikayok tiga. Great Slave Mutak. Oscar Mifflin. Wane kata umailin na abang may ekana yakti uyo kayo na may kate. Kayo na may malagalaw ti, Great Slave, ang nanganon, malagalaw ti. Kayo na may kate. Pingasot, kita ako luit. Peyton Simbaab, amalo. Iya, ilin na bengan ita mame, wane kataw yukulong matatung nga sugle. Ilita kayaw na nga malagalaw ng miton. Kaya kuya o si mayo api iwan ni ming mata. Kuya na may uwan ni kasi. Ilita kaya o si mayo si. Alayan ay katang makakaya ka nga si. Kuya na may. Kuya na may. Ilita kaya o nangin. Malagalaw ng miton. Kiujuti kinawaya lang mo kinawaya tok side. Kiujuti kinawaya tok side unik kala ang ano. Ilita kayaw na. Ilita kayaw titi na o. Apak ko tayo kausikot. Malagalaw ti alo na ifkitianik. Kaya na may kati. Kaya na may ang kawagat si. Pityak tao kawaga mapityak na ang may yung sila torsarbitju asinjorta awallan nealang magko polytechnic mo nautay may ko akino ay tako na nga sa nangkutik sa ko yun na may ilin na ato lang namang minister ko yun na may okate ko yun na may apiring man asinjor pala nangin ilin na ato lang ikot 8 ngo yun gava mo yun kanayati chinelatuun pangang pala nangin nutako asinjor tawala nalatun pingan siwilakang ayun 80 miling ni mata 66 ngini sutia asinjor tawala ya LA Canada gava makung 8 million ito ni silautuun Amalo gava magayaba 1 million ngini ito ni sisi magalote itali manawakagono atoktok sa nung aun erto ni Atokon na silut kino yan ilin na ako teksa no sibulak pa kasi utingin ilin na ako taktaw yun na tunon. Toka ngayon kayo na may okate. Apak ko to ok ausik ko yalo na if ming. Kayo na may okate. Now te makino ye Aurora College sila to sakbing aning ang nato. Asinjor tawala na lang magko. Ilin na ako tago eksang. Tita kaya kan na lang megasi ilin na to lagi ko kanaya nga na te makino ye na nailakpan. Kayo na may ilin na to lagi ng mga minister. Kayo na may okate. Kino ye o kausari sa tiyata ka kangagot. Pinami yugod awlati jutik saning kinaw yaning ilin na ko tang nang moto ang na to si bulak bangin no ako no ilin na ako nasikaw tigi yun nang mata ko yun na may maligalti yalon ay kitian noon ko yun na may tako ako yaw katang mata kinaw yung sanik taw luto javalong mata Ato kakayaw yo sila to sa may polytechnic mo to nga nato. Pigatit out nato katimayilo kayo si wala lang mata. Kanulito kasi ng mata kanaya nga na sila to sa may kanulilo lang mga ta asinjor tao na ang man. Polytechnic mo ilin ervik sa alaw. Kayo na may okate. Ang malutong nga suktit out there kaya tunalo nang ito. Man now yo tunisin ang mata 1.04 million nginito ni man now yo suli. Katima katigisi mangin nakit sila to sa arveo katima yingin. Katima yumanto ako teik sa baka tigi yun natataka paliteko. Alena ay making mata pigatiti yung alerton. Kino yan ay atoktok sa ning. Asing ining arna may yun nagaba maong ito. Kino yay ilangin. Amalo amisuno sa ilin na ako nang sinalakilotek. Nang manakatugot inoy kayo tao na ang mata kino yakon. Tao na kawaya na makita ko yun na may. Kayo na may ilin na tulagan mo. Kayo na may iyalo na efketianon. Kayo na may okate. Piyong isak pa minister yung. Kakita uyak ko tita kakulo. Kanong ikayo sa tao mga aunik karlo ne. Ulo me, kau iyumi ng mataman na. Kau iwagay ako na piyo ng sawakat arman. Ilita kayaw na ang mata. Pila kaya kayaw laki kasong nealakton. Antay man na pila nga kaya kakalawa mata. O kakdiwa kalutuin na akong nerlotin. Malagalaking minang mene. Kaya na may okate. Ilin na tulakan ng mga minister. Kaya na may. Pila katigit talo ko iksibaw nga katimaying ene. Katima katigilaw may yakapin na sa ako si ulaw to may. O kalag may gilaw may yaka uno. Amalo pibig sa katichilaw makuyalilaw may yaka. Katimaya ka laki na yalaga ng mobile, yalaga ng molog. takunakkusi sunatuinnarmi tukusinarviujunnatearmayuilinnaartuleqinarmu silatorservingmi katimayioqarviujunnaarmata quyunami apeqqutioqausikkuut Yellowknife Great Slave nganuun quyunami aleanai aanniartuleqiyikkuut pileriumangmatakisiani tukisimayakkuut nunalit pileriaqaqarmataguuq ayunginilimaarmini atorlutik ammalu ernisukseivik ming pileriyunnaqullugi nunalingninangmini aulakitainnariaqarniangimmata apequtinga kayusiyunnaartu kisiani uqattiakanniruviuqaa apequtigiyait kiinauyiatortuksai aivautaqoqsimangimmata maannaujung apeqilarlanga imannailingayuming kiinauyiatortuksait oqarsimangmata ernisuksiyiikku kiinauyaliangiakiliusiangi piiyartaunaalertuun kiinauyianiatortuksani aan mammiana ilinniartuleqinarmu minister oqarti ernisuksiyiit maannaujung aqtortaujaangittuut pileriaqiyauleqirtuun Yellowknife mi tikeqattarmata suli ammalu aksuruutauqattaqsimalluti tamakkua aqagugasaulertuuni pileriaqiyauliniungmata tamakkua qauyimayiauqutuinnalertaqa iqqamayaqaqaqattattaung piusigiaqutausimangmata taakkua iqqanayaaqiyauleriirtuunuun tamaaninnama Fort Resolution liaqattaqsimallungalu piyuttera aiviujunnangimmata mikiyuutini ayoqattarmata tukisimayaqa tamannaayuqutauninga pileqatigiyumagaluarsugit ernisuksiiyiin mikiyuutiunersammaringni nunaligni tamakkua isimaliuqutigeqattaqaaqarsimayaalugillugit ernisuksiiyunnaartuugaluali Fort Smith mi ikajortautiarmata ajornanginnilimaakkuun Fort Smith mittau ernisuksiiyuujunnaartu pileriyunnarsilisaattaarmata matuyausimakutaaktu alulaarmata maana angilligiartaujaangikainnartu usulli pigialisaaluarmata quyunamiing kiinauyiatortuksait katimayiqalaa katimaninginnu kamagiyaunаарmata 1.7 mipallayun atani -7 bracket 6 isimagsarsiurutik sa maariyaumata tagbani katamadjutik sariyassinni kiinauyianaatortuksani mammiana ministermuun maligalerti Grace Lemon quyunamiing maligarni sawayumanginnikkumu apeqqutuksaiqutiyunga quyunami maligalerti apeqqutioqausikkuun Trinity Williday quyunami uqarti June mammiana May 5 ngutillugu 2024 mi Patrick Simon hamlakku maligangani Tigusi yumalilaw mataw lataw kat ang nga inyo na nga fourth resolution. Kamayong mata suli maligatigo isumalong ng mata man na nunalingnig aba malagayik ko kamayaw lang mata pingasuniyak agulak tuni. Tuwang natulagan ang mulo pang nautik sa kag itya makigsute. Tuwang natulagan ang muto ka ngayon eh. Iglulagay ng mulo nito ka ngayon eh. Ato kang imata. Enterprise milo iglakaw nirsi matilawit. Makako pila katakaw ng paano na siya may iglulagay ko ning. Fourth resolution may enterprise milo iglu ako ti si mayo alo ikayok tao yakakang ningin no kayo na may. Kayo na may yukati. Kayo mayo kanu ilang aningin ni fourth resolution may taman na pibali yo alo tilo minister kati mayingin. Tawang katay na law mata kati makatikay na siya makiksutiglo to abang natulirilote. Teko sibulir tari aw mata tawan eh kamayo nangin eh kamayo takot makoy na may. Apakote akausik o tunide wala de koy na may kate. Nunaling nili gawa malagayik ko kanuilir tayo ng mata. Musuli otak kigat tuwang nang tuliri nang musuli pang nautak kang ito kangit ko kiyo yun na pa kayo na may nunaling niga mamalari ng mga minister kayo na may ikituliri ng mo kamagayaw kat ang mata patuliri ng ilin na tuliri ng mo minister nga naon makako nunaling niga mamalari ko ilagayaw na ang mata. Kanayati aviktong si maningin no kamayo yun. Tuwang natulirin ang may kanutuin na pang nautin eh kamayo na mata. Piyak sa kayaw kami tamak nunaling no ilaw piyo yaka katuga amang ito nulo. Timikotigi aw yun utak walo pang nautik sa ay. Piyak tao si mavik sa kang nerto June pig elis ang nga na piyak tao to apat ato inaw kaya ako mato inulima na fourth resolution me. Apat ko to kausik o tune a day wala day. Kayo na may okante kayo na may minister. Imain imaktar veo katarto so katarto alulaw mata imaiyak palayo alulaw matawan eh. Iku alalawa mo katirote imay katirote imain so atirto alulaw mata. Piyun outing ilo ang umayaw na suksut imakakayak ang nangin. Nunaling ni ka mamalaga ng mo minister. Kayo na mayo kate imaktakvek 60,000 ning kataning ato kung nakakama katiritut nga 120 liter ling ni kataw yang ning imyang tao si mayon no to nung ako may tikisay lilaw to hey river may ikayok tao ka nakakang nangin no pila katigiyaw law to nunalin imakain nakakang mata katiriya kakalirote takon ang tao lalakilutig luwasing atong tao nga ako natin. Imang vikakakang naming matatas ang mito abang nato kalakpat. Kayo na may king lakpa ay lagay ako. Kayo na may okante. Okante. Apikutik sa kami yung ikitok alaman. Anong sa akong iyo kalauman. Hamlet mute ang may resolution may. Nagsima ninga noon kano kaya kayo taawa alikong nangilang. Kayo na may noon aling ni ka mamalaga ng mga minister. Kayo na may kati. Kayo mayugod. qattiriyo qalauning ane amla kullo qawyimaya uyod naliukumak sa kamata nunaling nilugaba makutay kung ngawlaw mata ikanayak tingi qawyigasiti naliukumak sa kamangata kayo namin nunaling nilugaba malagalawti Ranger Lake.
Speaker, Mr. Speaker, in February of this year, my friend, the Minister of Health and Social Services, had mentioned that she was going to raise the issue of agency nursing at the national level, in particular with the Federal Minister of Health. So can she report back on what efforts she's made? I note that other provinces have now committed to banning or severely reducing the use of agency nurses. Where are we at? Thank you.
Member from Range Lake, Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was able to meet with the Minister of Health. I attended the meeting alongside two members from the Council of Leaders. We discussed the issues that related to the Northwest Territories. Agency nurse was one of them. This is a discussion that is continuing at the federal level, and there is a ministers' meeting that will be happening, I think, in the fall time, and that is again on that agenda. But I would just like to make also aware that right now in the Northwest Territories, we do only have 5 agency nurses which are working in obstetrics right now to make sure that we can still provide those services in the Northwest Territories. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Health and Social Services. Oral questions, member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it cost the government $4.4 million last year in private agency nurses. That's equivalent to 31 positions. So I'm not sure if it's 7 agency nurses to 31 public nurses, but that's a staggering ratio and the amount of money we're spending on these. So we need to put a stop to it. We need to wean ourselves off this addiction to private agency nurses. They're not working for our staff. They're not working for Northerners. I appreciate we want to keep the lights on in obstetrics, but there must be other solutions. So can the minister bring forward a plan, working with the authority, on staffing OBS without the use of private agency nurses? And can she bring it forward tomorrow? Thank you.
Thank you, member from Range Lake. 2 questions there, Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And yes, I can say that we are changing the staffing model in obstetrics, which is being done to support the obstetric nurses, as per some of the concerns that have been brought up over the years. And Mr. Speaker, you know, when we talk about the cost that agency nurses have costed, the cost that it cost the government for closing down the obstetric unit for 2 months was $1 million. So if we were to close it down, that's 700 births in the Northwest Territories annually in the obstetrics unit in Yellowknife. Those people would have to travel. 2 months, it costs us $1 million. So a year and putting those families, displacing those families, if we don't come up with, you know, if we can't staff it, that is a priority too. You know, we have to look at all different sides of it, and that's my job to be able to do that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Health and Social Services. Oral questions, member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we hired 84 nurses, frontline nurses last year, and of those 84, 69 left. Recruitment's become a revolving door. We must have a solution. We must staff these wards. So OBS worked just fine until it stopped working. What was working at OBS that's not working now? Can the minister tell us? Thank you.
Hear, hear. Thank you, member from Range Lake. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, like I said in the House before, we haven't used agency nurses. We've been able to recruit, retain. You know, the salary of nurses haven't changed. And so the other territories and provinces are starting to compete better. There's lots of different things that are in place that is challenging us to recruit. COVID, many people left the healthcare field. That is the biggest impact on our healthcare system, and we're still trying to recover from that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Health and Social Services. Final supplementary, member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just for, if my arithmetic's right, that's 15 net frontline positions that we were able to recruit from last year, and I think that's a shame. We need to do something. I'm going to propose again that the minister work on phasing out agency nurses within within a period of time. So let's throw a date out there. Will the minister agree to phase out agency nurses by the end of 2026? Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, member from Range Lake. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will not commit to anything that would impact our patients' health. And so if there are ways to get around this, that we can increase our staffing and our workflow, and maybe the changes that we're making in obstetrics right now will help to better, but it's not just it's not just obstetrics, you know. There's other areas in our small communities that we're struggling to get health CHINs, so community health nurses. Those healthcare shut down, it's going to impact those communities greatly, you know. So there's so many things that we need to look at before we just discontinue the use of agency nurses. I'd rather not use them. I'd rather not use them. I'd rather use that money to keep it in the territory, and you know, and if there's more nurses that want to train in obstetrics or in community health nurses, you know, that's something that we're trying to develop. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Health and Social Services. Oral questions. Member from Nunavut Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in my statement, I spoke about MTS and the need to think outside the box with some suggestions. One of those suggestions, Mr. Speaker, was looking at moving all or part of the operation further north to Inuktitut. And I know the department is currently doing a review. Can I ask the Minister of Infrastructure if part of that review will look at relocating some of MTS to the north? Thank you.
Member from Nunavut Lake, Minister of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the review itself at this point, which is quite close to being completed, doesn't consider, to my knowledge, whether or not to split the operations up, but really rather to look at what different types of models there might be for the operations as a whole. Thank you.
Of Infrastructure, member from Nunavut Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, I reiterate, I think that should be a part of what these governments are going to do with MTS. Can I also ask the Minister, has the part of the review process, as well as the Department, engaged with Indigenous governments on how MTS is affecting everyone in the region? Thank you.
Member from Nunavut Lake, Minister of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the process of the review did send out an invitation, I believe, at the end of last year to communities who rely on MTS so that they had the opportunity to participate. I don't have details in front of me confirming which communities did or did not. I know that some did, but I don't know if all responded to that inquiry to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Infrastructure. Oral questions, member from Nunavut Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So we're not committing to moving it to a location that would make absolute better sense. We're not sure what the Indigenous governments are saying about this. So, Mr. Speaker, maybe it's time we look at privatizing it. Look at Indigenous governments or private partnerships to sell this business and have someone run it outside of government. Mr. Speaker, would the Minister of Infrastructure comment on consideration for privatizing MTS?
Thank you. Thank you, member from Nunavut Lake. Minister of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that is exactly one of the questions that is part of this review, is what kinds of different governance models we might have for MTS. Not that long ago, MTS was privately owned, and it went into receivership. And when it went into receivership, all of the communities that depend on the resupply were put at risk. And at that point is when the government decided to step in. From that point forward, I'm not sure it has ever turned a profit. So if somebody out there wants to take it off our hands, that might be very good news. My concern becomes resupply, to ensure that we as a government are not leaving small communities in a situation where they can't rely on a situation for resupply. So again, that is part of the review. Different governance models, Crown Corporation, privatizing, maybe those doing the review, which hasn't reached my desk yet. I think it's due only just next month. Maybe they've got those creative solutions that my colleagues across the floor are looking for, and I'd certainly look forward to that opportunity to discuss it with them as soon as we have those options before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Infrastructure. Oral questions. Member from Yonge Lake North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, namiyokati. Annea tulegan mo, Minister Mon. Tanaw ni kakay na kung nakapapidyo ningining. Ngoyon kayo sisimatang nakautaw si Mayuni tagbane unikala kayo na may. Kayo na may okati. Takwaan na biliato no kayo yung machutik sa nektaw si manasuksutik. Inoy takani ito piyon na utakang ningining. Inik sa kahon na kung luwi-luwi kayo tao siya kung nakatak na mata. Sibuliutit ako katak siya umiluteng. Tusahi kahon naklutit lo. Tukisi umatiyang na sa yun na mata. Nirikto kanayak bing may tagbane. Ilagayaw yun oy sa mga lutaw katak to ni kiyo katak na mata. Kaway matiti yun na katak luteng. Tuloy ko ang umayakakang matay kayong tao yakakang nanginian na bilaton. Tanay kayo sa kumanlugo. Tako ay kanayak nga sakatit sakay titaaw lilaw man. Ato inaw yun nakulugin. Inuit ala nga yun uloy kayo tiksay. Tamak ko na nga ato katalaw to ikayo tiksanik tao si malakto na sumakang nakalaw to. Ikayong tao jumiyo yatso te ingmining. Amalo pila katakate ang nakasaulo tao lang sute na bilang si makatato kulong no kayo namin. Apa ko to okaw sikot. Kayo namin okate. Minister yo ato takapa. Ato takana asiba. Amaloy kayo tao jumiyo na kivan. Ang nasilte. Piyo ng sanay, pita kaya kataon kung lugi tayo mang. Kayo na may yan na talaga naman, minister. Kayo na may okati. Ay manayli okata ka mailangin. Ika na ayakti, apik sukta okata ka mata, apik kurik sanay, tuna okata wag suting. Amalo, ikayon ng mga ata. Kanayati timang ko ka mata katudya katiging mining kuya litata kalawa o kausa kayang itatuma kaway mayaw ko na mayaka kanayati o katigibaktak ano ka ba magkuni kaway yuminang matatak o kanuiling ang akon ng mga ata ilagay ako yellow knife o ang nanganon kayo naming minister o kakunak pa. Tako na nga. Tukisinaw tiksaning sa katitiyon ng mga ta. Kuya namiyaw na iPhone na nga noon. Malagalaw tiyan na talaga ng mon. Kuya namiyaw kati. Tukisinaw takang na ako ta. Kano to inaulo ni tayaw yung magpat. Tako. O kasi walangin na ko na to. Amalo, pila ka excited, pila ka ngoya kaya late, pila ka ngoya kaya kakasugiyak ka. Nuta ko ka tao na ang mata. Pang nautik sa ilo. Kanutuin na tiya, piyutin eh, kayong nakang na akong tig. Kaway mayaw ko ng mata. Kayo na mayo kate. Kayo na may kayong lapay, lagay ako tigsa, pakuriksang noon. Yalo na ako katiya noon, kayo na may. Kayong lang may, apak ko tig ilakta ka. Katimanilaw nginitin malagalaw tayo na tinitamato mani. Kiyo yun ako yakalawa ka sulay mako na pinasaw sing ni katimavik sa tahilo na ako yun na may. Kayo na may ako tayo man na kiyo na ito nga ako nang ikalaw so nga kauyo na sungnerto nga ayong natiangin mga unikalet. Sakit si tao ko ng nerming mata. Kanayaktig sa kakayakang nersutiglo. Tako na nga kamayo nerming mata. O kaso aning sa mayakalaw katek ko sa ina ato kasong nerakin. Koy naming. Teko ay sero ay utakikin na pibikit ulangat eh.
Colleagues, I'm going to take a short break and I'll
Nung kakain ng nakamakawi magitsayo kalaviw ka matuwang nataming.
Member statements, or sorry,
Apikote o kasikot. Mantui moon. Koy na may Minister, iglulagan ng moon. O sa kalauman. Malalaw te koy na may mantui may nunatsang may iglulagan ng moon minister koy na may apirikan ni kay na kon na patu ko sa katangin na ko apikota. Koy na may malalaw te mantui. Tan minister yo tita hatta sa maba sungman inna to kay akili yun na lakat ang mga akilik sa kalisong mga kaya na may amiso inna to kay pidyo takato adjiging ito yun na amiso na akilik sa kanang may noon ilang ini kausa tao ato galot amaluwa pa kayaw sa kami akilik sa tao palang mga inna to kay kau iget ya kakayak taka pidyo tao nang iti takatigo kayo na may maligalaw ti mantuwi mo kayo na may kati inna to kay uwaguliyawik tong si maningan nunatsiyang nang miniyang yung kata ako maguti iglutak kanuli piwala katakpat piwala titakat na si ungawatamak ko na nga nang minin igluta ako mayon kayo na may nunatsiyang may iglulangan ng mga kayo na may o kati itak iglulagayik ko kamayo nangin titakatak to kinako nang manigluta ako sa umang mga tako yun na may kate apakote o kausikot Minister tuave kakun na pa nang managtao tao yun na today igluksa na inatakan na to ngayon kayo na may nunatsya may iglulagay ng mo kayo na may isa magsasiro tao yaka kakayak to tamak ko uktutin to kasi nakataw tiyalaw latiglo kayo na may okate kayo na may kinglak pa ilagay ako kayo na may okate apik ko tig yaka pidyo tig iloko amiso alo inna to kay inna ko pala ang mata akilig sa kayaw yun isang kayaw yun nervyo yun nang ilanang miniglo ka kung nautingin nun nung natsama iglulagan ng mga minister kayo na may okate amisugasang ning akilig sa ling nito kang man nung natsama yun iglumining kasi kay makawataw katay na sungayo wala iglulagay ko no tamak ko amalo nakita ata ulute ing mikunga tita ulute kay makaw nagtaw te akat ang mata tayo may ilangan tako kayo na may okate kayo na may iglulagan ng mga minister apakote o kausing ko dahil so maligalaw te kayo na may iksibaw taong maligalaw te o kausi agot February may apakotigilaw ako ilita kaya ako lawit inulimapi yun na utakak igibak inyo na tseme 90 ulo iti kasi mamakilang matatak ko kay makawataw lang nangin noon kanga kaya nga kiyo na sugumali kalaw pa da na minista nga iglulaki ng mo apakotigilaw tatin ipako yung mga ako tikon iglulaki ng mo minister kaya na may okate kaya na may apiring man takwa katimaw tao law mata iglulagay ako nunatsame sa katiti yung mga tukiw tutik sa maning katimaw tao law nangin ni man na sa kingunago katimalak miguta kiujutik sakatitaw yamatun. Ilagay ako tigsay malagalaw ti ida ichomon. Kayo na may okati. Sivulerti ulauto sivunitin ni Cochrane sakatitilaw mga kawale ng metayaw yo. Ang kakangiti ulagay ng nunatsar may minister o kausak ako nakapakanuiling alang mga ta iglulagay ng mapiyak sa ang malakanuiliyaw law mga tata mga ni malagalawing may sakatita ulaw tilugin. Kayo na may okati iglulagay ikot. Nunatsar may kayo switcher to take ko na nga sakatita ulaw tuning. Ang kawala na kayo unikala tayaw lutit ay mang katimayakala tulak ko yaw si law mata take ko na nga kanuili ko tigsaw ng hindi kay mavik sa leo ko ilutig lo iglulagay ko no kamagayaw wala lagtut ang maloy lagay ko nang ikalwa mga taas ang hindi kanutya bakanang ilagay kan ko ng mga ta ang umayon nang sa kulugay igluta kaya katuno malagalaw tayo day chamon kayo na may nunat sa may iglulagay ng mga minister kaya kang teko tidak kay sa katitaw law to ang ikawala na kayo asing initaw kanayak wengin no pilagay kayaw kasi yun yaw na kivan nanito inatya misun ang ikakautner sa mga mata nunat sa may kayo na may malagalaw tayo day chamo kayo na may nunat sa may iglulagay ng mga kayo na may wakati tagba ni malagalaw tayo kausingin ni ilagay ko tiksang kanayak tiulo te ang ikotileong na lang mata nunaling nilo pang nautiksa leo maso te isumagayaw na nga kayo tiksa igluka ko tiksa no makuno nga suko no sa no inong no igluka nga ikutakto no to ka ngayon na kayo tiksa ning ukaw siksa kang na to katimaningin na kayo na may kayong lakbay lagay ako te kayo na may minister ka unak pa ka ng pilakayaw si malak mga tatak ko ilagay nakataw si mayo ilagay iksang na tulong na piyo si bala ko tiksaw yun nam nangin nun asya ako kanak tao kayo na may akate malagalaw ti day chamon ang malo malagalaw ti minister nunat sa may glulagay ng mon at iliw si malak to katudya katigi ko man ang mon ang ako tiksaning nunat sa may glulagay yung ako ilagayaw na matatamag ko nga o kasi yung malute ilita kayaw mayo ilita kayaw mangitiw kalawalunay si bulak pa ujaw ko yaw yun ang malupila kaya kain nato to kasi nato yun kasyo go na ko katudya katigingin nga nato ninyo na sa mitawag lula kaya ko pila kaya kang na mayo kayo tiksa ni si bulak pa ujaw yun ko yaw yun luna tao yun na kulugin Kinaw sa nagtao yun na kulugay aw lako tiksay pigi ako tiksay kinaw sa nagtao yun na nangit kaya na daw ka makungin ni nga nato ni ko yun na may kate ko yun na may malagalaw ti apak ko ti okaw siku makansidal ta moon ko yun na may kate apak ko dik sa kato nga minista nga ino naling ni ka mamalagay ng moon nunat sa meon iglo ko tingin amalo tung nga view waktu nunay nun ako tingin so at tek pala nangin ninyo nunat sa me minister kanayak ving alo ikayo kaya kakalaw kaming matataman na si Jack Pasing mon so at tek pala yun nun ang pivali ko tao kaya kamakilang may kayo tao luting sigjaw pa sing mi pilot tumitaman na sigjaw ni nga so at ang palayo alaw tilo ko kaya na may malagalaw tayo makansi moon nung naling ni gawa malaki ng moon minister Kuyunami okati kauyumayung asinginnin nunalingning. Kino iksanikta okat arsimayun ito ang natulungan ng motora ngayon sigjo pasinginni soqatterpallanang innutamaqqa takunage armiyakkatukusiarlugi qanuiliuqallakannerunnermangaata malagalerti nunalingnim gawamalaginermun quyunami makansidaaltamu taanna nunaleriillariuyuni takuneaqunnangilaqai tikittoqarunnangikkaluarmanga qawisartiunayartuning quyunamiing nunalingni gawamalaginermun minister ayuqati tusartitaorata aama pequteriu aleriyikkugu nunalingni gawamalagiyikkut pilereaqatigiyaullertuut taakku oqauseriyangitaatsuma quyunami malagalerti makansidaaltamaun quyunami minister taakkunuakioqataarma ilaga apeqqutigiyaqa piirtaummarigma quyunami oqati minister ilagillerunnarmiyangeqqai kajortaunanginniimmakansi미un July 16 mikatimaneartuni tauvani quyunami nunalingni gawamalaginermun minister quyunami oqati aksu nunalinnunngauyaqialaanagittiaqat katimaqatiginniusatuinnarpaqataanna oqausiuyunnarmaata tamakkuauvat quyunami nunalingni gawamalaginermun minister malagalerti yalunaiqitianuun
My questions today will also go to the Premier, who represents the Department of Justice. Mr. Speaker, I noticed recently on a visit to the Land Titles Office, they actually charge for a person to access, just to look at their own title. And it's representative of a bigger picture of the fact that these are nickel and dime fees, and I suspect that they don't garner a whole lot of money to float this government. That said, my question specifically to the minister is he aware that an individual, as in a singular person, goes to the Land Titles Office and has to pay, I think it's $5 or $4 to see their fee? Is he familiar with that issue? Thank you.
Thank you, member from Yonley Center. Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And so I'm familiar with that accessing some of the registries like the corporate registries and land titles do involve a fee. I've never tried to access my own. I was actually just trying to do that, but I didn't get it in time for the question, but I would assume I would have to pay for my own information just the same way as anyone else. So I am aware. Thank you.
Mr. Premier. Oral questions, member from Yonley Center.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not going to pull the fee number, but I think it's $5 for argument's sake. And if not, I mean, who cares? It's either 4 or 5. I mean, it's a moot point. The issue is the constant nickeling and diming of Northerners as we go about even just accessing our own personal information, and that kind of seems frustrating when you talk to constituents. Mr. Speaker, would the minister go back and look at how many individual citizens are actually paying that over the last 2 years? Now, I'm not talking about corporations or lawyers who are trying to garner access. I'm trying to find out, is the everyday person wanting to find out a little bit about their own personal information? Would the minister look into that? Thank you.
Thank you, member from Yonley Center. Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will look into whether or not we even have that information. I'm not sure whether that information is collected or not, but I can look into it, and then, if possible, we can put that information together, but I'm not even sure it's possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Oral questions, member from Yonley Center.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the, I guess I'll call it commitment, because I mean, it's tough to look into something until you know what you're looking into. That said, this speaks to the broader issue of the red tape initiative, which then bridges into these little micro costs that annoy the people from the day-to-day costs. So that said, if the Premier is able to look into that, or I should say the Justice Minister, sorry, is able to look into that, I mean, what else is this government assessing with respect to these micro costs that eat at everybody's day-to-day lives? Thank you.
From Yonley Center. Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. when somebody needs some information and they want to go forward and get it, in some cases it probably is reasonable that that person pays. It's a user pay. Otherwise, everybody else pays for that person's access. And so that is something that we need to take into consideration. I understand what the member is saying. It's some of these small irritances that impact people the most because they have to engage with those time and time again. But all the nickels and dimes add up, Mr. Speaker. We're trying to deliver serious services for people. We're trying to deal with climate change and natural disasters, and we want to make sure that we're putting our money where it's most important. And so, am I fully committed to getting rid of fees if people want to look at their own land titles? I can't say that right now, but I at least understand where the member's coming from. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Final supplementary, member from Yonley Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've already accepted the offer of the Premier to investigate and then sort of take it from there. And I was speaking in my last question more about the broader sense of the red tape initiative as we proceed forward. I do agree fully that nickels add to dimes, et cetera, and it all makes a difference. But when we're barely paying anything for the service, it begs the question. It costs more to process the payment than it actually did to do the work. So I guess my only question, Mr. Speaker, at this point is based on that principle of what is the government going to do to evaluate the red tape initiative concept in this government, whereas we're spending more in time than we're making in fees, and hence it's costing the government money just to process payments. Thank you.
Member from Yonley Centre, Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If it's costing us more to deliver it than the fees, I'm not sure we want to increase the fees to cover the full cost. If we did that for ATIP, it would be thousands of dollars everyone would have to provide per request. But when the member talks about reducing red tape in this initiative, this is a conversation that I'm really excited to have with the rest of the ministers, because this is something that is across government. We had initiatives last year. The Minister of Finance has a nice little award sitting on her desk, a pair of golden scissors, because we cut so much red tape in the last government. And this year, I want to see an even bigger pair of golden scissors on our desks, because we've made advances. This is a serious issue, Mr. Speaker. It's all of these little things that add up and that people have to deal with day after day. So I really look forward to working with ministers from different departments to figure out how we're going to go through policies, programs, legislation, and how we're going to create ways to develop legislation in the future that minimizes red tape. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Oral questions, member from Mophie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's a continue with my housing question. Can the Minister of Housing prioritize the transfer of housing stock to elderly clients over 60 years of age who live in their family home? Thank you.
Member from Mophie, Minister responsible for housing and NWT.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Qinaming qawyi majutik sa qawyi gaqaqarnaqa ke sivullermi kiuyu malluguta annapiqqut awyu quyinami yoqatti nunatsaarmi iglulerinermu minister apiqqutu oqavsikkuumma antuimiu quyinami taanna tilisiaqaqartu minister awyu nunatsaarmi iglulerinermuun innatoqait pilereqatik iyauyunnarmangaata quyinami minister nunatsaarmi iglulerinermuun quyinami ioqarti igluleriirjuakku imanna iliurunnarmata innatoqarniing akiliksalingniing ammalu oqaqatik iyauyunnarsuni taanna malagaliorti apersortu quyinami apiqqut oqavsikkuun maantuimmiuta quyinami oqatti minister iglulerinermuun ikayursuyunnarpa innatoqaqortuni akiliksalingnisuli minister nunatsaarmi iglulerinermu quyinami oqatti oqavsiuqqaummataau attaa nunatsaarmi iglulerinermi pilereeriauvallialermata taakkua uqausiunnaartutaat mga malagaleuti uyumu aperiyamu nquyunami malagaleuti nunatsaarmi malagaleuti tunade iwalade quyunami uqatti nunalingnikava malaginarmuun ministamuun uqauseqqaaqqaugama nunalingni datami dilo milo ikuallaktuleqinamu parnautiksani kama yeuqat aqurmata qanuilingalaqpalliikkua minister nunalingnika malaginarmuun quyunami uqatti nunali uqausiusimangmatatamakkoa nunalingni tuavernartuleqinamu parnauti tuavernartuliuqsimajaraaqarmata parnautining ammalu ikayurta uyumagutik ikayurta uyunnateartu uqaallalluti uvattinnuuqarlutik apequti uqausikkuutiunade iwalade quyunami uqatti qauyumagatsi fourth resolution make it tulealuuqaugma pinusuurusiununguani igluleqinamu minister uyu apiq asian apiqiyimatilluti titeqarkannereaqarneartaraati quyunami uqatti
2023, the Minister of Education, Culture, and Employment approved Aurora College's request to become a polytechnic university. And now we're hearing that there's a concern that there's never been appropriate funding for this transition. So can the minister, today's Minister of Education, Culture, and Employment, tell us, does the department feel that that request, there's enough support behind that request that they approved previously last year? And yeah, let's just start there. Thank you.
Thank you. Member from Range Lake, Minister of Education, Culture, and Employment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it would really be up to the college to let me know what their needs are versus what they're receiving from the department. As I have not received a request for additional funding in any formal capacity at this point, it's hard for me to speak to whether or not they have the resources that they need and what those additional resources might be. In addition to the $8 million from the federal government, the $1 million a year over the last 4 years as well from the GNWT, there was also the staffing of the 8 positions that did a substantial amount of the work in conjunction with Aurora College staff in a team-based approach to be able to put together a lot of the material needed to go through transformation. So there still is a significant amount of work, though, left to do, and I want to make sure that the college has the ability to get through that. Thank you.
Minister of Education, Culture, and Employment. Oral questions, member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I guess if the Aurora College has to come to the department to make a request, I would assume there's some evaluation that goes into that request before they sign off on it. But that's not this minister's responsibility. So I will ask another question. The new act that will govern Aurora College is scheduled to come into force on March 30th, 2025. Are we still on track? Is the department still on track to bring that legislation forward and have it in force at that date? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Range Lake, Minister of Education, Culture, and Employment.
I'll wait. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like the opportunity to look at where all the deliverables are in the milestones for Aurora College and come back to the member on that question so that I can make sure that I'm giving him the most up-to-date information based on some of the delays that have occurred. Thank you.
Minister of Education, Culture, and Employment. Member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, I mean, are we on track for to launch the new Aurora College on May 15th, 2025? Will that happen? Thank you.
Member from Range Lake, Minister of Education, Culture, and Employment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at this point there have been a few delays in the project, and it's anticipated that there will be a delay in the May 2025 launch date that was originally published. Thank you.
Minister of Education, Culture, and Employment. Final supplementary. Member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, is this government committed to ensuring the Aurora College transformation is successful? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Rangeley. Minister of Education, Culture and Employment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm definitely committed because I see the great value in this project. I want to ensure that I'm providing the support that I can provide to the Board of Governors, who really is in charge of the operations of the college and the remaining work that remains to be done as far as transformation is concerned. I think it's really important, though, to note that the process of going through transformation is not just about a shiny new campus or anything like that. It also has to do with the programming that's being offered by Aurora College and being able to develop that and being able to make sure that we're offering degree programs at Aurora College and that the college is offering what students are looking for in the Northwest Territories. So it's also about the programming. It's not just about the bricks and mortar of an institution. And I think that those, for me, are what is really exciting for the evolution and transformation of the college. Thank you.
Member or Minister of Education, Culture and Employment. Oral questions. Oral question from a member from Trinity-Willity.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, my question would be to
Ako yun na may apakulig sa katurangan na ito. Na mga wala na lang mga tatamangan, ikitulangan ng may. Abalo mako ano nagkukuti igloy kalitaw waktu tikita o kata ko yaw yun na mata ano natin noon. Takwa tukasi yumin nakto tikita o kata mga ta igloy ng mga minister. Nunaling ni gawa magiya waktu na Tover natuloy yung makalutin lutaman na yung iglulan ng ming. Makuakikin lang sa ukat mata igluy kalita ukat na sa trailer ng nakataw yun. Tama-tama na itay may lang yung may tamakilakata iglukik sang ng pidyutaw ng ano kayo na ming. Pagkote o kasi ko ilagay ako ti tunaday wala de kaya na ming. Kiugave then makuila ka ngayon no iglukak ba sana ni kalitaw so may iglo may ilisip iwala man nung natin ang malagaradyo kasi ninyo nagkukuta ka may tunuan tay may lang wala na laktuk zao yun iglo laking na iglo taakti tawagon nerlote Kanuili nga nalak pala iglo ikalitaw yun. Iliw kataw nalak pa ako yun na may kate. Ako yun na may kate. Tukisik tiyata ka isumalo tigiyata at sumamalagalang tayo. Ang kauna lang may yumita ko nagtawala lang mata iglo laki konon. Ang malakano igluliw ang akon ng mga tayo sa magsasota wala na lang mata. Ilagay ako tiksay tunaday wala day. Minister nga na iglulakan ang mausulikan na nunaliit. Iglutati tao laki ko nerso ti kaligang na igluliw tao usimalang mata ilangin na magsangit tukulo katang mata akano ilang alak palita ko ako yun na may inunat sa may iglulakan naman iglukang ito ko ti nunaling niya misulang mata te mga ikwala yung kalaw ti lugon nunan sini pinasaw sa unang wani Ujak tu cara kakata namang avik sa kakayakam na ngayon ito avang nakto maring maing. Iniksanik daw si mayakakang mata ang kakain na lutin ito ko kausriyate. Iko alavi yung isa alaut kayo na maing. Range Lake.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Education and Culture and Employment talked about a shiny new campus in Yellowknife. Can she give the House an update on the progress of the Aurora College campus here in the capital? Thank you.
Member from Range Lake, Minister of Education, Culture and Employment.
Mr. Speaker, I don't have any information at my fingertips right now as far as the, when these things will appear in the capital. I would love to get an update on that for committee, and I can commit to doing so. But really, there's a lot of steps that need to happen before we end up with bricks and mortar institution anywhere in the territory, in addition to what we have right now. I know that in speaking to the Board of Governors, their prime focus right now is student housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Education, Culture and Employment. Oral questions, member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I think that's the point of the new campus is student housing. So what does the minister know about student housing here in Yellowknife? Thank you.
Member from Range Lake, Minister of Education, Culture and Employment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can tell you that the Board of Governors has identified that as their primary goal of how they'd like to start building some new infrastructure. They've identified that not just in Yellowknife, but also in Fort Smith and also down the road in Inuvik. And I can also update this House that it is something that they're very focused on, and that they acknowledge that it is a need in the territory in order to make sure that students have an opportunity to have somewhere to hang their head at night so that they can make it to class, and that place needs to, of course, be affordable. Thank you.
Education, Culture, Employment. Oral questions, member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's becoming increasingly obvious that there's a disconnect between the Board of Governors and the ministry. Can the minister commit to working with the Board of Governors to better understand their needs and bringing a quantifiable, tangible proposal forward to a standing committee of this House, so we understand what they need to be successful in this transition, because they are saying they are on a knife's edge, and I for one don't want to see them teeter over. I want to see them succeed. I want to see our students succeed. It just seems like we're not at the same place here, and can the minister commit to righting the ship, getting us to where we need to be? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member from Range Lake, Minister of Education, Culture and Employment.
Mr. Speaker, I'm in a very interesting position where it's not really my story to tell. It's the Aurora College's story to tell. It's the Board of Governors' story to tell. So just like last time when it's not my story to tell. So my last time when I was in front of this House, I recommended to committee that they have Aurora College in front of them. They have done that, and I recommend that they ask Aurora College what their schedule is as far as their master plan for their facilities and also for their housing, and what they are doing in order to achieve those goals. Thank you.
Minister of Education, Culture and Employment. Final supplementary, member from Range Lake.
Mr. Speaker, the minister gives the institution $32 million and then some every year. So this is very much her story to tell, because she's the one funding it. So will the minister commit to, if not exploring how we can improve this relationship, putting some accountability matrix on that grant? So if Aurora College isn't hitting these timelines, isn't making progress, then they lose their grant. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
From Range Lake, Minister for Education, Culture and Employment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think that it's fair to say that given the investment of dollars from the GNWT into the Aurora College transformation, along with the investment of dollars from the federal government into the transformation, that there are many people that want to see this happen. There's also a number of people who are sitting on the board who have said they are passionate about seeing this happen. It's also worthwhile acknowledging that the positions through the Aurora College transformation also came from the surplus of Aurora College. Aurora College carries a surplus. And so, Mr. Speaker, there are dollars that are available, and I think, yes, that there needs to be a conversation about how those dollars are being used to see this transformation through. I absolutely agree with the member that a significant amount of public dollars go to Aurora College and fund Aurora College, and those dollars are approved by this House, Mr. Speaker. So I look forward to seeing how that conversation evolves on the floor of this House. Thank you.
Member from Education, or Minister for Education, Culture and Employment. Colleagues, the time is up for oral questions.
Titakati o apakote kiuchuti titakati o apakote noon. Kami sinaw kausingin no kiuchutik sain. At iliyak tao si mayutuk sa kautin. Kati mayakala kay makwataw ng inni. Pakoyak say. Unikala kati mayakala ang unak Sakit itaw ng titakain. Sakit itaw ng titakain. Malagalaw ti. Avat ilaga ng mon. Oku amak o titakak sakit ito mayakak. Unikalat. 94-20 brackets 1. Avat ilaga ng mo piyon na ilaga ng. Ang malo titakay. Pakatingin ilagay yangin. Sakit itaw ng titakay. Minister Sibulati. Oku na nga sakit ito yung mayong Nunat sa may itong nabigayaw yun June 30, 2023, mutikilo nagkaalian. Titakay sakit itaw ningin. Malagalaw ti, makotiliga ng maon. Titakay 2024, 2025, Mikino 8, atok-tok sa 8. Power Corporation, kumiksano, unikalian, kaya namin. Sakit itaw ningin titakay. Kauyik ay ni pigatit tinang pigatit ay malagalaw tayo range ay. O kati imay matitakay sa katitaw ng 94-20 brackets 1. Nasa utili 1-8-22-28 sa katitaw ko lugit. Pero yung ako ti. Kaya na may kati. Imay mat. Aulat tinang mo tayo may mapigatit tibong ay pertaw lungan Twin Lake Moon. Tiliyaw si manangin yun at siya ka pa magkungin sa katitaw ko lugit. Isa magsang siya tao na ang mata ko yun na may kate. Okay, matiyakto. Pero yung mga audit, pigati tayo yung mo na magsaktoon. Na magsangitun. Nakuangitun. Pero yung mga audit kayo siyok. Pero yung mga audit, ikaw ikay ni sibulang may kalimang taon ningin. Sibulang pa may kalimang taon ningin. Sibulang pa may kalimang taon ningin. Tuglang may kalimang taon ningin, pero yaksain. Isa magsasayo tigsay katimayakala ilunay ni katimaningin ni Ministeryo Kausingin 4-25-20 brackets 1. Ministeryo Kausingin 70 Minasa Utili. Ministeryo Kausingin 24-20 brackets 1. Sa katitaw si Mayuti Takait 93-20 brackets 1. Sa katitaw ng Ititakait 67-20 brackets 1. Maligalil ti ide chow Munich si bakta kayaw ni.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I now call the committee.
Unusak kun katimayakala katimanang mon. Kanuili ako mavisi. Iksi bakta. Isi magsasiyo tao kawiyavod. Sa katitaw si Mayo pero yung ako tema na 67-20 brackets 1. Ang ikpisi Kasi ako tiginelak tapos si bulang may kataman chutik sa Kati mayakala no ka kay nang nelaktut. No ka nga kay nang nelaktut.
Thank you. Committee, we have agreed to consider table document 67-20 mandate of the Government of the Northwest Territories 2023 to 2027. I will now open the floor to general comments on table document 67-20 (1). Any member may speak up for 10 minutes and may speak more than once at the okay. We're gonna 67-20 (1). Mandate of the Government of the Northwest Territories 2023 to 2027. I will now open the floor to general comments on table documents 67-20 (1). Any member may speak up for up to 10 minutes and may speak more than once. Any? Members wish to speak? Ms. Morgan.
Do I stand up? No, I sit down. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Chair. I have to say I'm quite pleased overall with how the mandate for the 20th Assembly turned out. I can't say the same about the business plans, unfortunately, but I will say lots more about that tomorrow. First, I feel that the development of the priorities was a collaborative process that all 19 of us could support. And while the mandate itself wasn't exactly collectively authored by all of us, and that, as an aside, is a wordsmithing exercise that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, done by a committee of 19 politicians. But there were numerous opportunities for both written and in-person feedback and discussion on the draft mandates. One thing I appreciate and I want to draw attention to, because it was based on some suggestions by regular members, is an opening list of commitments about how the public service will do its work. One of the most common messages I heard when I was campaigning last fall was the profound frustration with how the GNBT operates and the general workplace environment. In my opening speech last November, I said, we will not accomplish any ambitious priority we set for ourselves in this Assembly until we get our house in order. So in the mandate, while it may be tempting to skip straight down to the bullet points under each priority area, I encourage folks to carefully review the opening where it states, the public service is the GNBT's greatest resource and must be supported and respected within an environment that fosters a sense of purpose and well-being and empowers performance, excellence, and innovation. Our highly trained and dedicated public servants deserve to work in an environment that allows them to contribute to their fullest potential, that values and supports them in providing services with empathy and efficiency, and that encourages and rewards creativity and flexibility. Now, Cabinet Radio observed that some of the language used in the mandate would not be out of place in a wedding vow. That could spark some long and interesting discussions with the public and civil servants about the depth and steadfastness of anyone's love for the government. But there's no need for that debate today. I actually appreciate the tone of this mandate document. For me, it reads in an engaging, clear, and direct way with language that humanizes what we're trying to do instead of the usual jargon and bureaucraties. One of the commitments is to empower the public service by ensuring they're provided the flexibility to deliver programs and implement policies in ways that best serve residents. So that sounds simple, but if taken seriously, it could be a profound shift in the way our government works. The government often retreats into the safety of focusing on processes, policies, frameworks, plans, strategies, and it measures its success by checking off the boxes when we've completed those things. The idea here would be to measure our success by whether we've actually helped people, made their lives better. So people would come first at the end of the day, not the letter of the policy. In that same Cabin Radio article, the Premier related that commitment to putting people first to the need to increase the government's risk tolerance. So I agree that we should be talking more openly about risk tolerance in government. And that is unfortunately something that is missing from that list of commitments. I believe we need to enshrine a commitment to always consider in every decision not only the risks of new options, but also the risks in maintaining the status quo. We're often biased towards accepting or just taking for granted the status quo, even when it is unjust, expensive, inefficient, while we exaggerate the risks inherent in any change. So we have to train ourselves to examine the risks and costs of the status quo first. Another commitment that I would have liked to see more detail on is the last one around openness, transparency, and accountability by engaging with partners, the public, and the public service. So this is a major source of public frustration, and I believe we should be explaining how this government is going to do it differently. I believe we need to commit to share information as early and as freely as possible, and to publicly admit when we make mistakes and communicate how we will learn from them and do better. Now to the main priority areas, starting with housing. The emphasis in housing is on partnerships, including Indigenous, federal, and community governments, and by working to encourage private investment. I understand and appreciate that emphasis because the scale of housing needs in the NWT is vast, and the GNWT simply does not have the resources to be making billion-dollar ribbon-cutting announcements about new housing. So we have to be strategic and try to leverage federal and private investment. That being said, we need to be open about or come to terms with the fact that public housing is going to continue to fall squarely on the GNWT's shoulders. Indigenous governments are accessing significant federal funding for housing, but my understanding is they do not want to or intend to take on public housing. But I haven't seen this government articulate anywhere our vision when it comes to public housing, what we're actually committed to accomplish in public housing over this assembly. How are we planning to maintain our current public housing assets, repair and improve the quality of existing housing, plenty of which is currently boarded up? And what is our plan to try to prevent vandalism and damage going forward? On economic foundations, one of the big reasons I pushed us to include the word foundations with this priority, of course, was to highlight the importance of JK-12 education and basic literacy. And currently, these are entirely missing from the mandate and business plans. Now, I understand that the district education authorities rightfully maintain a lot of control over education, but this government has an important role in setting goals and expectations. The last assembly set a goal of increasing graduation rates, which was not successful, and I believe that that goal misses the point. I think we need to set clear goals around literacy and allocate resources inside and outside the formal education system to give us a chance of meeting the goals. Another important foundation of the economy is energy, and the mandate talks about investments in green power generation and transmission. I just want to point out that often people associate green energy and reducing emissions only with electricity, but we need to remember that transportation and heating, including those associated with heavy industry like mining, are our biggest sources of GHG emissions and also carry high costs. So we need to think more broadly and strategically about our energy transition than just electricity. In terms of healthcare, I support the ideas in this section and the emphasis on primary care, but I do think there's not enough recognition of the need for a new approach to retention of healthcare workers. Now, we always hear the phrase recruitment and retention spoken in the same breath, but we're actually doing quite well in recruitment, yet we're losing staff faster than we can hire them. Retention requires a significantly different strategy than recruitment, so I think we need to start separating them in our thinking. With regard to addressing the effects of trauma, One thing that's not explicitly mentioned is the need to address the root causes of family violence and gender-based violence and support survivors and their families in breaking the cycle. We do have a significant amount of federal funding to do this work, but I don't want that work to be done in the shadows. The mandate emphasizes that Indigenous governments will need to take the lead on culturally appropriate trauma treatment, mental wellness, and addictions programming. Now, I understand the value in this. I'm just not sure how well Yellowknife can see itself in the way this priority is worded in the mandate. Yellowknife, obviously, is where almost half of our population resides, including many people from small communities who are struggling the most with addictions and mental wellness. The work of serving these folks often falls on nonprofits in Yellowknife, but they are usually not eligible for the same sorts of federal funding opportunities as Indigenous governments. So it's not clear to me how they're supposed to take the lead on developing and delivering new programming when they can't even access basic sustainable funding to keep their doors open. Beyond capital or startup funding, the nonprofits in Yellowknife need ongoing operational support, support from medical professionals, outreach services, outreach nurses, and social workers who usually work for the GNBT. So we need to see these kinds of partnerships reflected in the mandate and the business plans. This also relates to the mandate item around public safety, which emphasizes the need for working together with law enforcement. So often it falls on law enforcement to deal with non-criminal social issues. But I think the RCMP themselves would be the first to tell you they should not be doing that, and their resources should be reserved for criminal issues. While there's renewed emphasis on the land healing and wellness supports and aftercare support, there are still significant gaps in the spectrum of mental health and addictions.
Is there anybody else, any other members that would like to speak? See no more comments. Thank you, committee. Do you agree that? Okay. Member for Frame Lake.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yeah, I'm sorry, I was just waiting to see if some other members. Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to see if other members wanted to speak up, but in absence of them, I will definitely share some thoughts. Yeah, I have a bit of prepared comments here, and we'll try to go off the cuff a little bit also. So I'm going to do my best here to speak to the mandate specifically and not the business plans because they are separate documents. We are looking at them separately. But at this point, I do think it's difficult to separate the two because anything measurable is contained in the business plans, and lack of measurable targets and tangible action was one of my main concerns with the draft mandate when it was first presented to us. And certainly I shared that sentiment in comments to my colleagues in caucus and also in a follow-up email. I appreciate the government tabling the business plans publicly, and I'm hesitantly open to supporting the idea of putting measurables in the business plans if the plan is to make the documents public going forward, which it is as I see right now. We can discuss the level to which measurable goals have been sufficiently included in the business plans when we discuss those specifically. For the mandate, I would say that for the average citizen, and indeed ourselves, the disadvantage with this new approach is that we have made figuring out exactly what the government is doing and when it plans to achieve it a much more difficult and convoluted task. So the business plans are a 280-page document. So currently, there isn't a place where a person can quickly look to the mandate and determine what the government is specifically working to achieve under each mandate statement or item. The mandate statements are quite broad and I think could be criticized to be saying a lot of things that the government is currently working on. So it's hard to say that this is particularly visionary. I think that this is a gap which the government should work to address in its public communications and suggest it would help both the public and members to better track and hold the government to account for mandate progress if we did have a place where we could access the mandate and the very specific measurable items that are associated with it. I realize that's going to be in the business plans, but again, it's a 280-page document, and we can't quickly go through those and sort of identify targets. Excuse me. So on one hand, we have created much more focused priorities, which I was a strong advocate for and I'm glad we achieved, but the government has taken those and expanded upon them to the point where they are now attached to a document which is hundreds of pages long, and as I can personally attest, takes days to pore through in detail. So to the mandate itself. The mandate, as tabled, speaks to challenging status quo and driving positive change. When I look at the 2024-25 budget as proposed, I've found myself questioning how much are we really challenging status quo, and particularly questioning the government's understanding of what the process of priority setting truly involves. I'll speak to that sentiment more in response to the budget itself. To the mandate itself, I will say that for the most part I agree with and appreciate the sentiments shared by the previous speaker, the member for Yellowknife North. I do see myself, particularly in the priorities that were set by caucus, by the 19 members. I am pleased to see housing at the top, a strong economic foundation, access to health care. Those are things that I specifically campaigned on and committed to residents to bring to the table as priorities, and so I'm very happy to see those in there. So I think that we were focused in our priority setting, and I am pleased to see that those priorities are being spoken to throughout the business plan. So I do think the government has done its best to focus on the priorities when implementing the business plans. Again, I'll speak to those more in specific tomorrow. So the difficulty with the mandate, of course, is the lack of measurability in it. And I think that it remains to be seen if the process of attaching mandate to business plans is going to be an effective way to track progress and hold the government to account. So I think that probably how I can most helpfully provide comment here is just to speak to each individual item and what it means to me, because I haven't had a chance to kind of speak to the mandate itself. So housing. What did I mean when I brought housing forward as a priority? To put it quite simply, what that meant to me is that we were going to be increasing housing stock available to residents in the territory, making it more affordable to get into housing in the territory, and in particular also investing in operations and maintenance of housing in the territory, which we have fallen woefully behind upon. And we simply have not been funding O&M of housing at the level to which we need to over the past number of years, focusing more on capital projects. And so the difficulty with that, of course, is that housing stock is slowly decreasing in quality and needing repair and falling out of repair and having to be taken offline when what we need to be doing is kind of maintaining what we have and building more. So that's what I meant, and so we've said that we're increasing housing availability. Whether we have, as the member for Yellowknife North mentioned, kind of a solid plan for doing that, I think we have not yet quite articulated what our long-term plan is and what we're really trying to achieve, so I'm hoping that we can get there with the business plans. I'm going to speak to the economy. It's amazing how quickly we run out of time here. Speaking to the economy, I think the one that I want to speak to the most here is growing and enhancing the northern workforce by investing in skill development and attracting skilled workers to the NWT. I very much appreciate that this is the top item in economy, and I have more to say on this topic when we get to business plans and perhaps reply to the budget address, but the bottom line I'll say is that the foundation of a strong economy is people, and the reason for building a strong economy is people. And so investing in people through housing, through education, through health, I think is how we build the foundation for a strong economy. And that's mostly what I meant when I was speaking to that. I think that the other items that are in here are things that I've contributed to, and agree with also. I think I agree with the comments made by my previous colleague there on power infrastructure and just acknowledging that there's a little bit more to this than just green power generation and transmission. Access to healthcare, I'm quite happy with what we've put in here. I think it's simple. I hope that it's achievable. And certainly what I was saying during the election and what I brought forward as a priority is focusing on access to primary care in the NWT, and that is at the top of the list here. So I am pleased to see that. As for the next ones, addressing the effects of trauma, emergency management, I think I'm pleased with what's in there. Again, whether we can be measurable in what we're doing. I have some comments specific to emergency management that I think I'll save for a statement because they're quite specific, and I'm quickly running out of time. On public safety, on this item, I definitely asked some questions during development of the mandate that I put to Cabinet and want to speak to those a little bit. And just want to note that there's a strong connection between public safety and the items that we have in addressing the effects of trauma and access to healthcare that I think I would like to have seen us create some better connections between. And that is just to say, quite simply, most of the social problems that we are facing in the Northwest Territories are not problems that we can police our way out of. And scientifically, and research behind these topics has shown time and time again that you can't police your way out of social issues. The way out of social issues is poverty reduction, treating addictions, mental health, wellness, ensuring that everybody has equal ability to participate in the economy. That's what truly helps societies get over social ills. It's not something that you can just take people and put them in jail and expect that the problems are going to go away. So, I've got 20 seconds left. I had a bit of a comment that I wanted to make, but I guess I'll have to include that in either tomorrow's or in a reply to the budget address, so I'll leave my comments at that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, member from Frame Lake. Mr. Testart.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just reminding colleagues that you may speak twice to an item if the chair allows, but once my time is sorted out on the clock, I will begin. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, who likes ice cream? I think you'll find most people do. It takes a real curmudgeonly character to not enjoy a sweet treat. And much like that sentiment with this mandate, there's a lot to like in here. It's an aspirational document that speaks to how the government is going to take the priorities of this assembly seriously and deliver on them. What it's short on is detail and tangible outcomes. And that is largely my issue with this document. I look to the business plans, which the previous speaker, my friend from Frame Lake, spoke to, is 280 pages. And within those pages, you will find concrete and tangible outcomes. There are some spending targets and commitments identified. There are timelines for legislation. There are numbers of houses to be built, those kind of details. Without that, this document remains comfortably in the stratosphere of an aspirational document, which is fine to have. I think these kind of documents are important. This kind of language is important, and to remain hopeful and collaborative is important as well. But is it useful as a priority-setting document? I don't think so. I think it's pretty clear we worked collaboratively to develop those priorities, and what we want to see is tangible outcomes to make them a reality. So we can go back to our constituents and say, this is what this government did. If I go back to someone now and say, we've increased investment certainty and create opportunities for the private sector by streamlining administrative processes and ensuring regulatory systems and decision-making are consistent, efficient, and predictable. That's a nice principle to have, but how do we do that? What is the what? That's the objective. How are we going to get there? And we still don't, and the answer is in those business plans, and that's what requires more scrutiny, I think, from this House to really see if we're achieving these things. And I guess when we speak to process, because process is important to any government and any governing institution, and certainly a legislative institution as well, I have to ask, is this the best process for this assembly? If this isn't a really useful accountability tool, if it's not a useful tool for setting mandates, because we're already setting mandates through business plans and mandate letters, then what is it really? And I think we could have skipped this step and gone straight into the business plans or straight into the mandate letters. And I'm just concerned that if we continue on this path, we have this commitment to take more risks. We're going to see a government that creates a risk secretariat that's going to evaluate risks and give the government policy guides on what risks to take and what risks not to take, and we're going to establish a new process for that. We need to just govern. We need to just give, a clear budget address that has these priorities in it, that shows how we're going to invest in them, and then, asks members to support it. And, so I just wish we would be a little less cautious in even how we go about the business here. It's taken us a long time to get to this point, and we're still waiting to pass our first real budget that's going to have tangible outcomes, and I don't think everyone's happy with that budget. So it's going to take negotiation. It's going to take back and forth. I think we're slow on that process as well, and the clock is counting down, not just on my time, but on our time in this assembly as well. So I want to see us succeed. I want to see us work together to succeed, but I also want to make sure we're maximizing our time effectively. And I think sometimes we get bogged down in process like this when we could just be moving forward with something more concrete and tangible. So that being said, I support everything that's in here, 100%. But I do want to see the how, the why, the what, how we're going to achieve these things. And that, for me, that this document leaves more questions than answers. So I look forward to tomorrow's review of business plans, when we'll have more to say about that. But until then, I think I've said everything that needs to be said from my perspective on this document. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, member from Rains Lake. Is there any other member that would like to speak? Ms. Inuktitut.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Premier and Cabinet, for the mandate, issuing the mandate, tabling the mandate. I appreciate the work's been done on it. I concur with some of what's been said with my colleagues in that, it's great to have the mandate. I support the mandate. It is a good document. It's a high-level document, but as we know, where the rubber hits the road will be in the business plans. And that's where as we said, we have things that are deliverable and measurable, and things we can look to do to what we need to do to get our work done. And, I get it, like everyone gets it. There's only so much budget to go around. There's only so many things we can do. And, there's many things in there that we know we need to get done, and I appreciate that we're looking at that over 4 years. I appreciate that the Premier has his 50-year plan as well, which I know we want to look to where we have to get in the future. Having said that, the government, to set that path to prosperity, I guess we need to continue to look outside the box. We need to continue to look at different solutions. I like that in there. You see a lot of working with Indigenous governments, with NGOs, with municipal governments. I think it's so important, as I've said previously, to look at redundancies and where we're spending our money and where money can be spent otherwise, and look at, opportunities to access funding that maybe we would not have been able to access, without that. So I think that's also very important, and that we continue that. We sat around as 19 of us before we sat in this house, and we talked about those things. We met for 2 days with the Indigenous governments, and we talked about those things, about how we can look at redundancies and how we can think outside the box. So I think it's, I've stated that many times. I've spoke many times about our whole of community approach. Well, I think that also, translates into a whole of government approach. Not only us working together as a consensus government and doing what we need to do, and working with other governments as well within our territory. You know, and we'll touch on this on the business plans a little more tomorrow, but looking at the economy, we need revenue, we need to grow. You know, we need to look again outside the box, ways we can grow. And, you know, one of my colleagues talked about people. It's very important, about recruitment, about getting people to work in the territory and getting people that are working outside the territory potentially back in the territory. And I think that's so very important for us, and not just for, you know, people talk about the transfer payments, but for the other things, the income tax, the work that, you know, the work that people do, the rent they pay, the groceries they buy, the hockey coaches they provide. Those things are all important to us as a territory as well. As I said previously, sorry, I just lost my thought there for 1 second. Yes, that whole community approach. Anyway, Madam Chair, when we do get to the business plans tomorrow, we'll be able to discuss some more of that. We'll look at, again, talking about the economy. We know we don't touch on things that are happening in the territory. We need to focus on things that what's happening in my region, where the Inuit are leading the charge on developing natural gas up there. And as we know we have the third largest reserves of natural gas in the world. And, you know, we rarely, that's kind of something we hardly hear spoke about here. We talk about the mining industry, which is super important to us, but there's also other industries still with potential here. The world still needs natural gas. They still need that product yet for a while, so it's important, I think, that we look at that. We look at the Inuvik satellite station in Inuvik and the things that are going on there, things like that, outside the box thinking that can provide some of that revenue for our government. So yeah, I think I will leave it at that. Again, thank you. As my colleague from Range Lake has said, I support this document. I appreciate the document, but much work to be done, and I look forward to going through the business plans. Thank you.
Thank you, member from Inuvik Bootleg. Any other members? See no more member from Yellowknife Center.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Chairperson. I was trying to decide if I wanted to speak to the mandate or not. I mean, you heard largely what my colleagues had said, and I mean, just working backwards, I mean, it's really tough to disagree with this. I mean, because the statements are so high level. You know, I often feel that the public wants more and expects more, and this is the fault of consensus government, which is we can't be specific, and the only reason we can't be specific is because it's us. We choose to be that way. If I was in charge of a mandate by myself, or is able to sort of like prime my colleagues to agree, I mean, we'd say simply, as I said earlier today in my statement, which is, you know, we would mandate 100 new homes for social housing. You know, we'd work towards that goal. We would commit the forces, like a team, an army, to meet these challenges. We'd say, for example, today, we're going to work to get 150 kilometers of Mackenzie Valley Highway done by the end of this term. And to me, those are the types of things that the public's looking for. I mean, if I was to quote President George Bush, I mean, I'd say mission accomplished with this little hit chuckle, because the mandate itself looks like it's largely completed already. And the problem is the cabinet's hearing this as a criticism, but it's not a criticism. The problem is these things are written as so wide. I mean, you know, better streamline admin process, engage public. I mean, we do that every day now. You know, sometimes better, sometimes worse, but in all fairness, we do this. You know, open and transparent government. I mean, we try those things, we do those things. I mean, none of this is new. That's the problem. I mean, every government, including the ones, the 21st Assembly, etc., and on and on and on, will be struggling with the same phrases. How do we break free from the static position of, of the static truth of mandates, which is they're statements that, nothing is groundbreaking. I mean, I'm not advocating for party politics, but, when a government comes into force, I mean, it says, I'm going to make highways, or I'm going to set up a bottle depot in every community, or in the sense of recycling, and or we're going to build more houses, and this is how many we're going to build. And that's the problem with this process, is we don't even, we're almost afraid of our shadow to make those commitments. And I don't know why that it continues to be this way. I mean, I can keep advocating for more, be specific, and I will continue to advocate, but it's an unfortunate symptom of the way we do work. I mean, I believe in empowering the Premier to lead the cabinet, but we don't do it that way. I believe and they should be able to make decisions, but yet we tie ourselves up into these ball of yarns that are fought over by kittens, so they're quite a mess, unable to follow a line of decision making and process and getting free. I mean, it's such a tangled web of confusion sometimes. And what do? We further hit ourselves with more policy and process. I mean, the general public, I find in my experience, wanted to hear things like, we're going to build 2 more addiction centers by the end of this term. Like, I'm serious, that's specific. They would like to hear that. And I know we can't do everything for everybody, but that's the reality of government, which is you try your best, but at least try. I don't think my point on another 150 kilometers of Mackenzie Valley Highway being built, if we only did 149, I don't think people would be angry with us. I think they would be inspired by our blazing trail of call to action, I mean, when I hear deliver equitable access to sustainable primary health care, I mean, that is every day. I mean, I can't imagine someone not attempting to deliver equitable access to sustainable primary care. I mean, it's hard to imagine that isn't the case. And it's frustrating because, like I say, when I talk to people, they want to hear specifics. They want to hear that there is a call to action and one that they can measure us, every one of us, against. And for better or for worse, that at least helps, inspires us. Because, I mean, if we said we were going to build another 100 public housing units to help people, and, that would be an easy way to rally behind, because, I mean, we'd be looking to the left of us and say, how do we help and get this darn thing done? And we'd be looking to the right and say, how do we get those things done? And, you do your part because we're all going to do it. But now it's just, well, we're going to work together. That's the mandate, and that's really what it says. I mean, the last 2 speakers are right. I mean, of course they support this. I mean, who doesn't support working on addressing the effects of trauma? But, as an example, or emergency management, who doesn't support any of these things? I mean, it's impossible not to support them. But again, Madam Chairperson, the challenge, like I say, is that I think it largely will be taken, it shouldn't be taken personal, and it's not intended to be personal, but I mean, the public really is frustrated by these challenges, which is, what does it really say? And what does it really mean? And what does it really deliver? And for me to go back to them or speak to them at my constituency meeting, which, by the way, is at 6:30 tonight for all those listening at Javaroma, till 8:30. I mean, the reality is they want to know and be able to sink their teeth into something. And to that, I see the ultimate frustration of, what are politicians really saying? What are they accomplishing? What are they doing? I have nothing to measure them by. And then when it comes polling day, they're rating you on your personality, basically, as opposed to the government. Or they're mad at the government and blaming regular members, which is often, I've seen the case. The government doing this, and it must be your fault. But if you read this, I mean, we've already done it. I mean, so Madam Chair, yes, I support the Public Safety Initiative statements. I support all the statements. I can run through them all, but I don't think I'll do that. So if I just say I support them all, I mean, it's hard not to. And that's the frustration about the mandate, is that we've waited over 6 months to see statements that don't have specifics. And I don't know, if I had my way, like I say, I mean, the government would pick 5 or 6 areas, target them very precisely, and show the public we're going to rise to the challenge, and if we don't rise, we're going to darndest do our best. And to that, I suspect every one of us in this room will be rewarded with either the good cheers or good support, at least emotionally, with our communities for having the best their best interest in our hearts. And that really, in some ways, is a lot of the work we do here. So I'm going to say that's all I have to say right now. But of course, I reserve my right to reflect differently in a different direction as the moment spurs or as other members inspire. So anyway, thank you, Madam Chairperson, and good luck on measuring these things. Cheers.
Thank you, member from Yellowknife Centre. Member from Wolfwe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, when Premier made his speech at the beginning, balance the budget and to build good working relationship with the Indigenous government, settling outstanding land claims, etc. I like that, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that, was pleased with that statement. There's a lot of other First Nations that didn't settle their land claims were also pleased as well, So, which is a good start. I like that, But this mandate here, there's 9 pages, and they are right, it is very vague. Here, access to health care, deliver equitable access to sustainable primary care in all NWT communities. Not in all, there are going to be some communities, how would you accommodate for a community like Inuktitut, So not every one of them, we're not going to have this equitable access, So it's just that how they're going to do this is one of the things that kind of missing in the mandate. But I know it's in the business plan, but it's very long. And, something like this where the mandate, 9 pages, but it's just that it would have been nice if there was more explanations and details of how they're going to do it. So I have no issues. It's just that I know this turnaround, this government is doing something different, which we didn't have this mandate, we didn't have this business plan, but we had the main estimate. So main estimate, that's where we ask all those questions. But I guess now that, tomorrow, we're going to be discussing that tomorrow, and we'll look into it more. But even with the housing, to end homelessness, especially in small communities, in larger center, yes, there's more of our people are moving to larger center because to have a better life. We can have that in small communities if we had access to more program and services, if we had more housing, because there's not too many people in the small communities where homelessness should not be an issue. And it doesn't say that in here too, that they talk about the homelessness, but it's mostly in regional center, not in small communities. So I do have issues with that. And mental health services, we do have lots of issues there. And public safety, it talked about here, law enforcement, in small communities like Gamity, they don't have an RCMP. They've been asking to ensure public safety, they do need an RCMP or law enforcement, or law enforcement, some form of law enforcement in that community, and Inuktitut too as well. It's not just them, but there are other communities that are lacking that services. So it would have been nice how, they're going to be focusing on crime prevention. In small communities, there's lots of issues. We lack a lot of recreation activities. There's not much to do for our young people. So all they do is just, the only activities that most of these communities have is the school activities. there's nothing outside of school in some of the communities. So we do need more, and it would have been nice if that was identified in here too as well, you know, because and lately that crime has been happening due to drug related. So it's just that I do like what I see here, but it's just that it would have been nice if it was explained more in detail. I don't want to talk down the clock, but I'm sure there are other members here that wants to talk as well. But I do like what the Premier, the Premier said in his statement before, that, Indigenous government, Indigenous people having good working relationship with them is more important for us, especially from the small communities. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you from member of Malfui, Premier.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for the comments. I do appreciate it. I know that this is a departure from previous mandates of this government and of other mandates that you would see in a system where there's a political party who could bring together their apparatus, come up with a plan, and lay that out on day one. The reason that this mandate is sparse in terms of actual deliverables is because I've seen 2 mandates prior to this government. I've been involved with the Assembly for 2 previous terms, and each of those mandates had hundreds. I think the first one had hundreds, the second one had maybe 170 commitments in there. And they were specific commitments, and I did not find that to be a great way to, I guess, to govern. I didn't find that to be the most useful document. As a regular member, I rarely ever referred to that mandate. If there were issues in my constituency, I would speak with businesses or constituents, and over time I would determine whether or not things had gotten better by how people interacted with the system. If people's problems were never solved, then I knew things weren't getting better. You can really get a sense of how things are operating and how the government is doing just through the day-to-day business of being an MLA. And so I wasn't too concerned about deliverables in here, or sorry, measurements in here, but as the members point out, it is in the mandate, or in the business plans. In terms of these areas being broad, yes, some of them are very broad. So it was mentioned the healthcare commitment to deliver equitable access to suitable primary healthcare, and that's one of only 4 commitments under that area. And so what that does to me, it says if you're going to bring forward something about healthcare, you bring forward a program or an ask, it better be focused on ensuring equitable access to primary healthcare. So it's a way to filter out some of the other things that the government does that perhaps don't focus on the priorities of the Assembly. Similarly, there's comments in there about streamlining administrative processes. So if a program is coming forward, it better have streamlined administrative processes. If there's an initiative, it better be reducing the regulatory burden. So as much as what we're going to do, this is a signal to the government of what we're not going to do. We're not going to do the same things. We're going to bring forward initiatives that are in line with this mandate. And so it is different. I didn't want to do the same thing. I didn't want to tie this government to initiatives that were created within the first month or 2 after the priorities were developed, because it was only 3 months ago that the priorities of the Assembly were set. So I know we've been here 6 months, but it hasn't been 6 months that we've had the priorities to develop this mandate. So I won't say much more, but I do look forward to working with the members and Cabinet and Indigenous government partners, as was pointed out, to really flesh out what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And we're going to do it by working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. Why Yellowknife North?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do make a daily goal for myself of not going over my time limit, and I failed once again. Maybe tomorrow. I just had a few sentences left. So I was just going to say that I appreciate the renewed emphasis under addressing the effects of trauma on on-the-land healing and wellness supports and aftercare support, but there are still some significant gaps in the spectrum of mental health and addiction supports that I think we need to talk more about, including harm reduction and stabilization, including managed alcohol programs, and also medically supported detox facilities, which there's not nearly enough capacity for in this territory. And just to conclude, when we embarked on this process of setting priorities, I, like many others, wanted to see a strategic plan type document with measurable and outcome-oriented goals. Now, we didn't get there with the priorities or with the mandate, and you could argue that a strategic plan was not ever going to be part of these documents. It turns out that there are many stages along the way, which is fine as long as it all nests together and leads us ultimately to that strategic plan. Unfortunately, so far I see a major disconnect between this mandate and the business plan, but I'll speak more to that tomorrow. So thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me finish my statement.
Thank you, member from Yellowknife North. Frame Lake, member for Frame Lake.
Yep, I'm just waiting for my time. Thank you, Madam Chair, for indulging a second round, and I just wanted to quickly kind of provide my my closing comments here. So just a couple more points. I mean, as I spoke to earlier, I appreciated Cabinet kind of listening to our comments, and I certainly saw mine reflected in the updated mandate document, so I appreciate them listening, and wanted to highlight just a few things. One is the statement on page 2 about strengthening collaboration between departments. It goes on to talk about fostering a sense of purpose and well-being and empowering performance and excellence and innovation in our staff. There's another bullet point on page 3, empowering the public service by ensuring they are provided the flexibility to deliver programs and honoring the GNWT's commitments to openness, transparency, and accountability. So those statements, I just wanted to highlight those because I wanted to note that some of those things I think some people would say are a pretty monumental shift in how the GNWT does business. And that is something that I was advocating for. I noted in my comments on the mandate that I wanted to see us speak to, let's see here. I was talking about things like implementing results-based management systems, program measurement, a reference to changing management structure and practice to better facilitate employee empowerment and engagement. So I was hoping to see specifics like that. And also a commitment to improving workplace morale and employee satisfaction. I would note, unfortunately, that workplace morale and employee satisfaction has been noted to be fairly low in recent surveys of staff. So I just wanted to point out these statements and say that they're very nice to see and hear, and it remains to be seen that we're going to remain committed to these and ensure that we actually implement them with policies, with changes to how things are done, with shifts in the way management is done at the GNWT. And I think those, as I said, would be quite monumental shifts, and I think they'd be very appreciated by a lot of people, including myself, because I think these shifts are one of the keys to ensuring that these mandate commitments actually get implemented. So I'm just going to share some closing comments that I shared with Cabinet when we were in caucus. I wanted to make the comments publicly also. Let's be bold. Let's take risks. I think we all know that we're facing major challenges during the term of this Assembly, and that status quo is not acceptable, nor will it get us where we need to go. And so I want to encourage Cabinet to take those risks. You've spoken to it in the mandate, and I want to see you do it on the ground. With regard to the relationship between regular members and Cabinet, I think that we often see the differences between our two sides, but the distinction is much less significant for the public who put us in here. I think people judge our success as an Assembly based on the successes and operations of the government. So your success is our success, and I want us to be working together, like you've said, to achieve that. I also want to speak to kind of just the specific work of MLAs. I want, as much as possible, our committee projects to align with the mandate and help investigate and make recommendations as to how we can improve our ability to achieve it. So that's my commitment back to Cabinet, is that when working on the regular MLA side, we'll be scoping out our projects and doing projects that relate to either mandate or business plan items, things that either we have expertise in or we think need an extra lens on, to ensure that we are actually making good on some of these commitments, because this is a very ambitious list of tasks and we have a very short period of time to achieve them. What I want to see from Cabinet is strong leadership to ensure that the bureaucracy is implementing what we're talking about in this room on the ground, particularly with regards to working collaboratively, helping people, ensuring that people perceive the change we're talking about here in their communities and in their interactions with the government. So that's pretty much it from me. And when I speak to strong leadership, what I mean is, are we seeing change that we're talking about here actually implemented? And so some of you will notice that I haven't been providing questions ahead of time as much as I was in the first session, and that's I was saying to one of the ministers earlier that one of the reasons for that is I want to know what the ministers are bringing to the table in terms of leadership for these departments. And so I do want to hear the minister's voice, not just the department's voice, when we're asking questions. And so having taken 5 minutes already, I think I'll leave my comments at that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, member from Frame Lake. Seeing no more comments, thank you, committee. Do you agree that you have concluded consideration of table document 67-20 brackets 1? Thank you, committee. We have concluded consideration of table document 67-20 brackets 1. Member for Boot Lake.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I move that the chair rise and report progress.
There is a motion on the floor to report progress. The motion is in order and non-debatable. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion is carried. I will now rise and report progress.
I'll call this House back to order. Member from Ditchell, can I have the report of the Committee of the Whole?
Mr. Speaker, your committee has been considering table document 67-20(1) and would like to report progress.
Thank you. Member for the Ditchell, do I have a seconder for the report of Committee of the Whole? A member from Range Lake. Thank you. The motion is in order and is non-debatable. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All those abstaining? The motion has been carried and the report of the Committee of the Whole has been concurred with. Thank you. Third readings of bills. Third readings of bills. Mr. Clerk, orders of the day.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Orders of the day for Tuesday, May 28th, 2024, 1:30 p.m. Prayer, minister statements, member statements, recognition of visitors in the gallery, replies to the budget address, day 3 of 7, reports of committees on the review of bills, reports of standing and special committees, returns to oral questions, acknowledgements, oral questions, written questions, returns to written questions, replies to the Commissioner's address. Petitions, tabling of documents, notices of motion, motions, motion 26-20(1), notice of motions for first reading of bills, second reading of bills, consideration in committee of the whole of bills and other matters, minister statements 4, 5, 17, 24, and table document 93-20(1), report of committee of the whole, third reading of bills, orders of the day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The House stands adjourned until Tuesday, May 28, 2024 at 1:30 p.m.